Chapter 34:15. Xian hurriedly asked, Master Guzhen, are you going to return to Jianghu Temple? Heh, I don't think I need to tell you where I'm going, do I? What Xian said to Guzhen earlier. Guzhen returned the same words. However, Xian was not surprised. With a smile on her lips she replied, If I have a chance to let Master Guzhen get rid of the drawback of not being able to bring karma into samsara, I wonder if Master Guzhen is willing to take it? What do you mean, benefactress? Guzhen wasn't as ecstatic as Xian thought. Instead, he frowned and the monk robe on his tall figure trembled slightly. This trembling wasn't due to excitement, but a kind of alertness. Even Xianxia was puzzled by Xian's words. He said, Xian, being a Buddhist guardian is a kind of sacrifice. Grandmaster Guzhen and the others often have no choice but to kill demons and protect Buddha. Tanyue, you don't need to use this to provoke Grandmaster Guzhen's Buddhist heart. Before Xianxia finished speaking, Xian pursed her lips and smiled. Fellow immortal Xianxia, do you think I'm joking with Master Guzhen? Do you think I don't know some secrets of Buddhism? Little girl. Guzhen said coldly, just say what you want to say. Why beat around the bush? I've long offered my body to Buddhism and the Buddha fruit to the Buddha Lord. I'm no longer interested in the secret arts of breaking away from being a guardian and condensing karma. I don't know how many secret arts your Buddhism sect has. Xian said faintly, but I know a place where there might be ancient Buddha rainbow. Ancient Buddha rainbow? How is that possible? When Xian finished speaking, Guzhen was dumbfounded. He cried out in disbelief, how can there be an ancient Buddha in the Pure Land world? With that, Guzhen's tall figure trembled involuntarily. His previous alertness had long disappeared and was replaced by excitement from the bottom of his heart. What's ancient Buddha rainbow? Seeing Guzhen so nervous and excited, Xianxia naturally knew that this thing was really useful to Guzhen. However, he had never heard of ancient Buddha color. The ancient Buddha luster is a 7-colored relic condensed by the reincarnation of the ancient Buddha Lord. This relic contains the supreme willpower of the Buddha Lord. However, because the negative karma in it was not pure, it was abandoned when the Buddha Lord reincarnated. Xian glanced at the speechless Guzhen and explained, the Buddha Lord's karma is so powerful. Who can resist the Buddha Lord's karma? Therefore, no one dared to use this 7-colored relic. However, after the 7-colored Sarira was placed between heaven and earth for 100,000 or even millions of years, the karma in it would be tempered by the mind power of the Pure Land. In the end, only the mind power of the Buddha Lord in the Sarira would be left. Although it was only a wisp or half a wisp, it was powerful enough to allow a bodhisattva to attain fruition. If Master Guzhen condensed this thing, the half-wisp of mind power would be enough for him to condense a protective relic and protect the relic's negative karma during his reincarnation, ensuring that he would not lose his mind. Such a thing. Why didn't Xian mention it before? Xianxia was shocked and asked without hesitation. Xian smiled and shook her head. It's not that I didn't want to explain it to you, fellow immortal. It's just that you and I are not strong enough to come into contact with this thing. If I said it, it would only make you greedy, and it would even be detrimental to your cultivation. Today, I met Master Guzhen, and I have a request for you. With your strength you should be able to give it a try. Naturally, I had to explain it to you. I see. Xianxia nodded slightly, obviously trusting Xian. I understand now. Then Xianxia turned to Guzhen. Under the moonlight, Guzhen's tall figure had stabilized. She said, Grandmaster, does what Xian said make sense? That's right. Guzhen's eyes flickered under the moonlight. He said, although the path of being a Buddhist Dharma protector isn't smooth, Buddha is merciful and leaves many chances for survival. This ancient Buddha relic is the safest, but it's also the most difficult. Not to mention that the sons of Buddhas who can ascend wouldn't have too many relics left behind. Even if they did, there wouldn't be many. The Pure Land is so vast and there are so many sons of Buddhas. Anyone who can obtain it is a great opportunity. This old monk never thought there would be an ancient Buddha relic left in this world. At this point, Guzhen stared at Xianxia and asked coldly, May I know how I can be of service to you, benefactress? And how could benefactress possibly know the whereabouts of such a supreme treasure of the Buddhist sect? Heh. Xianxia looked up at Gu Zhan's monk robe. His hands hidden under the robe seemed to have formed a Buddhist seal. She smiled faintly and reached out to take a hairpin from her hair. She flung her hand and the hairpin streaked across the air with a golden light before landing in front of Gu Zhan. Grandmaster, you'll know when you see it. But don't reveal my origin. Oh. Gu Zhan frowned. He stretched out his hand, which was as thick as a dragon's claw, and grabbed the hairpin. When he glanced at the hairpin, he was surprised. He looked at the hairpin several times and then at Xianxia. Finally, he waved his hand and returned the hairpin to Xianxia. He said, I understand. Since you have such a background, it's no big deal for you to know this secret. Xianxia took the hairpin and looked at Xi Hui with a smile. Xi Hui immediately waved her hand and said, Xianxia, there's no need for this little monk to see it. This little monk befriended Immortal friend not because of Immortal friend's origin. If this little monk knew about it, there would be a dispute in my words. This little monk doesn't want to speak without thinking. Heh, that's right. Xianxia stretched out her hand and inserted the golden hairpin into her hair, not giving Xiaohua the opportunity to examine it. Damn it, is there a need for this? Xiaohua secretly curled his lips. This Xiao has seen Murong Tsongyun from a first-class family and Princess Baihua from Chanu country. Even if you're the daughter of a first-class family, what can you do? This Xiao doesn't even have the mood to tease you. Umitba, I've sinned. This little monk is Di Pu, not Xiaohua from the Dao sect. How can you talk about teasing me? What does New Tanyue want this old monk to do? Gu Zhan's tone was somewhat cautious. The female benefactor also changed to New Tanyue. It's like this. Xianxia said concisely. This one invites immortal friend Xi Hui to go to an ancient ruin. That's where the immortals and Buddhas joined hands to kill the Dao sect. As far as this one knows, there's an immortal artifact left behind in the Pure Land world. Immortal. Immortal artifact? Gu Zhan was dumbfounded again. He immediately looked up at the full moon in the sky. He almost suspected that he was dreaming. First there was the ancient Buddha celestial artifact, and now there was an immortal artifact. This was something he had never dreamt of. Yes, it's an immortal artifact. Xianxia said with a smile. If it's not an immortal artifact, how could there be the ancient Buddha celestial artifact? But Gu Zhan originally wanted to ask how Xianxia knew, but thinking of the golden hairpin he saw just now, he felt somewhat relieved. If it's not that kind of origin, how could there be such a secret? This secret was left behind by the Dao sect that we joined hands to kill. Therefore there are a lot of formations inside. Ordinary Buddhas and Confucian cultivators can't find it, let alone go in. After so many years, the location of this secret has long been forgotten. If this one hadn't looked up an old matter recently, no matter what, I wouldn't have thought that there was such an immortal artifact in the Pure Land world. Xianxia said again. Since it's an immortal artifact, how can we do it? Female Tanyue should ask for help from her own sect. Gu Zhan smiled bitterly. Although he coveted the ancient Buddha celestial artifact, he still knew that this place was not a place where he could escape unscathed. Xianxia waved her hand disapprovingly. Master, you're wrong. If this one asks for help from others, how could the immortal artifact fall into their hands? Master, don't forget that it's an immortal artifact. Which Confucian cultivator doesn't want it? Until now, this one only dares to tell fellow immortal Xi Hui and Master about this. This one doesn't dare to trust anyone else. Gu Zhan opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he was stopped by Xianxia's words. Moreover, this one has made sufficient preparations for this matter. Not only did I read the records of that place clearly, but I also memorized all the formations inside. I also have a well-thought-out plan to break all the formations. As a matter of fact, this one came to the Four Extremes Mountain to borrow a Dao sect magic treasure from Master Heaven Flipping Master to break one of the formations. Of course, since Master Heaven Flipping Master has fallen, you should be able to use his Buddhist alms bowl as well. Oh, so that's how it is. Gu Zhen finally understood. Female Tanyue wants to break the Dao sect's water-based formation. Exactly. Xianxia clapped her hands and smiled. You're right, Master. If you're not in a hurry to return to the Crimson Melon Temple, you can come with us. I estimate that the round trip will take around 20 days. Oh. Gu Zhen was surprised again. Only 20 days? How could there be such a forbidden area near the Four Extremes mountain? This one has already spoken so frankly. Master, there's no need to force this one any further, right? Xian said with a smile. Gu Zhen's face flushed red, and he smiled embarrassedly. He put his palms together and said, Ba, female Tanua has indeed given this old monk a difficult problem. Since it's an opportunity, it won't be easy. Xian smiled. If it's so easy to obtain, how could it be called an opportunity? In any case, this one has already explained the reason for this matter. It's up to Master to decide whether to go or not. Xi Hui. Gu Zhen thought for a moment, then suddenly asked the little monk, Xi Hui. Xi Hui was clearly taken aback, but he hastily nodded and said, This little monk is here. Do you have any instructions for me, martial ancestor? Do you know where that secret is? Gu Zhen asked. Chapter 34:16. Xi Hui glanced at Xian and said with a smile, Xian Tanua didn't tell me the details, but I know the general location. It'll definitely take less than 20 days. Since that's the case, I'll go with Xian Tanua. Hearing that, Gu Zhen made a decision. I just need to return to Jianghu Temple within a month. Good, Xian clapped and said. With an expert like Master Gu Zhen, I'll have more confidence. Gu Zhen waved his hand. I have some useless Buddhist abilities, so I don't dare to hope for any immortal tools. I only hope to obtain the ancient Buddha Kai Li under New Tanua's guidance. Oh, in addition to that, I don't need anything in the forbidden area. I won't ask about the specific distribution. Ba, thank you for your help, Grandmaster. Xi Hui knew these words were meant for him, so he didn't dare to neglect and hurriedly thanked him. Since you've decided, we'd better hurry over. Xian urged. We'll try our best to leave more time for you. Benefactor Xian. Xiaohua said with a wry smile. Now that things have come to this, you should tell me where you're going, right? Of course. Xian said with a smile. I'm not afraid to tell you that it's Saint River. Even if you know it's Saint River, without my guidance, you won't be able to find the forbidden area. Saint River? Xiaohua was stunned, and so was Gu Zhen. The two of them said almost at the same time. The Saint River of the 3 rivers and 4 seas? Xiaohua blinked his eyes. He had said this sentence, but there was one sentence he did not shout out. Saint Jiang is actually in the Elysium world? Gu Zhen followed Xiaohua and said, Is it the Saint River that Saint River hides the Emperor's sword, and the Emperor's sword comes out to suppress the 9 provinces? This is beyond old monk's expectations. That's right, it's that Saint River. Xian said proudly. In the 3 continents, besides the Saint River of the Pure Land world, who else dares to call themselves Saint River? Alas, I go to Saint River almost every year. Why didn't I know there was such a forbidden area at the bottom of the river? Gu Zhen sighed. Xi Hui, on the other hand, was very calm. She smiled and shook her head. Grandmaster, the Saint River crosses the Pure Land world. It is known as the origin of the 2 seas. How did you find the forbidden area in such a huge Saint River? Is the immortal artifact the Son of Heaven's sword? Xiaohua suddenly called out. Xian looked at Xiaohua, rolled her eyes, and said sarcastically, Little monk Tipu, the sage Jiangtsong's Son of Heaven's sword is just a legend. Do you think the Dao sect's immortal weapon can suppress the 9 regions? If that's the case, where would the face of us Confucian cultivators go? Even without the Son of Heaven's sword. Since Saint Jiang is in the Pure Land world of the Buddhism sect, could it be that the origin of the Confucian cultivators is the Pure Land world? Not the hidden immortal continent? Xiaohua seized the opportunity and unceremoniously retorted. Xian didn't open her mouth, but Xi Hui, who was next to her, was surprised. She said in surprise, If it weren't for junior brother Tipu, this little monk would never have thought about this. This Saint Jiang is clearly the name of Confucian cultivators, so why is it still called this in the Pure Land world? Even the name hasn't been changed. It's really puzzling. Speaking to this point, Xi Hui somewhat apologetically said to Xian Tanua, don't blame this little monk for being curious. This little monk has always been engrossed in Buddhist cultivation, so I don't know much about these secular things. Suddenly hearing this today, I feel a bit strange. It's not that I'm being disrespectful to you Confucian cultivators. Hee, Xianxia smiled and said, fellow Immortal Xianxia's attitude is normal. Haggling over every ounce is not good for your cultivation. As for why Saint Jiang is in the Pure Land world and why the name of Saint Jiang is contrary to the name of the Buddhism sect, this involves a great ancient secret. This little one only vaguely heard about it. As for the specific truth, I'm afraid it has long been annihilated in time and space. If even female benefactor doesn't know, then I'm afraid not many people in this world know. Gu Zhan obviously had the same idea as Xi Hui. He also didn't care about Saint Jiang or Buddha Jiang. He casually said, and then looked up at the full moon and urged, since female benefactor doesn't know what that immortal tool is, it's not too late for me to wait until we reach Saint Jiang. Yes, let's hurry on our way. On the way, this little one will tell the two fellow immortals what I know, so that we can carefully plan and avoid any mistakes. Xian naturally echoed. She waved her hand, and the somewhat lazy strange bird in the distance immediately shook its black and white feathers and flew over. Strange, since the Son of Heaven's sword is so powerful and is said to be able to shake the 9 regions, why is it not ranked in the top 10 imperial tools? Xiao Hua's curiosity was greatly aroused. He followed behind Xian and asked, since there is a saying that Saint Jiang hid the Son of Heaven's sword, then is the Son of Heaven's sword in Saint Jiang now? If it's not there, then where is the Son of Heaven's sword? Oh, the Son of Heaven's sword. The Son of Heaven is the Son of Heaven. In this world, who can wield the Son of Heaven's sword? Xiao Hua's question was even more powerful than the Buddhist sect's secret incantation. Hearing it, Xian covered her face and ran away. She jumped on the strange bird and soared into the sky, escaping without a trace. Hi, this is an impatient little girl. Xiao Hua very regretfully stood in the air and shrugged his shoulders. This scholarly family's upbringing is indeed a bit lacking. Don't they know that not answering other people's questions is impolite? Junior brother Tipu. The azure lion flew to Xiao Hua's side. Xi Hui sat upright on top of it and said with a smile, previously, junior brother mentioned Virokana? This little monk just happened to have some understanding, so I'll discuss it with junior brother now. Haha, very good. Xiao Hua laughed loudly. His figure flew up and landed on the azure lion's back. He sat down cross-legged. The azure lion raised its head and roared. Blue clouds appeared under its feet and it chased after the purple fur hoe that had already flown away. Xiao Hua often heard people say that when drinking with a bosom friend, 1,000 cups were too few, and when talking to a friend, half a sentence was too much. He didn't like spiritual wine very much, so he had never had 1,000 cups of wine competition with others. However, there were quite a few cultivators who didn't get along with him. However, when it came to a monk like Xi Hui, Xiao Hua had never met him before. There was no need to talk about Li Zongbao, who didn't say a single word for a long time. There was also no need to talk about Zhang Qingxiao. Although this guy talked a lot, every word he said didn't deviate from the devil sect. He was abnormally arrogant. As for the other people, they didn't make Xiao Hua feel relaxed and free. It seemed that in front of Xi Hui, he could talk about anything. He and Xi Hui could debate about the Dharma for several days in a row, citing scriptures and arguments. Sometimes they argued until their faces and ears turned red, but when they talked until their mouths and tongues were dry, they would look at each other and smile. Perhaps no one could convince the other, but the two of them had gained a lot in their hearts. Xi Hui's attainments in the Dharma were very deep, but he was also very humble. In front of Xiao Hua, he didn't have the slightest trace of arrogance. Every time Xiao Hua said something, every question he asked, he would definitely answer, and he would tell everything he knew. This made Xiao Hua's understanding of the Dharma become deeper and deeper in these 10 days. Every time Xiao Hua gained something, he would be exultant and share it with Xi Hui. It was as if he was a real monk. Xiao Hua was close to Xi Hui, so how could Xi Hui not admire Xiao Hua? Seeing that Xiao Hua's Dharma cultivation was getting deeper and deeper, the smile on the corner of his mouth also became more and more intense. He felt very gratified that he had brought Xiao Hua out of the Shaoling Long Temple in the Great Snow Mountain. If such a little monk with the root of wisdom was left on a barren mountain, the Buddhist sect would have one less famous senior monk in the future. Alas, the Buddhist sect is really amazing. This Xiao really underestimated them in the past. On this day, Xiao Hua and Ci Hui debated for a while and mentioned a slightly obscure Buddhist principle. Ci Hui didn't know how to explain it for a while, so he closed his eyes and pondered. Xiao Hua also temporarily rested. He raised his eyes to look at the purple-haired hoe and the strange bird flying in front of him. Then he released his Buddhist sense again to explore the situation below. He sighed endlessly in his heart. This Dharma is broad and profound, and the profoundness within it is endless. Even if there are monks who don't cultivate the Dharma, they can still benefit a lot from it. If compared to Confucian cultivators, Dharma is literature, and Dharma is martial. The two can be separated from each other, but they can also complement each other. If compared to my Tao sect seems to be much weaker in this aspect. Tao sect scriptures are mostly about cultivation, about overcoming the heavens with oneself. If this Xiao didn't come to the 3 continents, how could I jump out from the bottom of a well? How could I know the mysteries of Confucian cultivators and Buddhism? Those prejudices against Buddhism from before, presumably also have to be removed. Whether it was Buddhism or Confucianism, there were those who pretended to be sanctimonious, those who pretended to be righteous, those who pretended to be benevolent, those who spoke sweet words but swords at the heart, and those who were cruel and merciless. But at the same time, there were those who were sincere, those who were warm-hearted, those who were open-minded, and those who were kind on the outside but soft-hearted. Didn't they say that the same rice could raise 100 different kinds of people? There are also 10,000 kinds of people under one cultivation sect. This is human nature, and it has nothing to do with the cultivation method. It's just that, since this Xiao is a cultivator, he must cultivate properly. Since this Xiao has the opportunity to learn from others, then he must learn from different cultivators. Learning from each other's strong points is the way of cultivation. After thinking through this, the prejudice against Buddhism in Xiao Hua's heart gradually disappeared. He unconsciously relaxed, as if he had broken free from some kind of invisible shackle. Then, he released his Buddhist sense and casually looked at the ground. Previously, when Xiao Hua came from the snowy mountain to the Four Extremes mountain, the road was completely desolate, and it was rare to see people. Not to mention the snowy mountain, which was extremely high and covered in snow, ordinary Buddhist children wouldn't go there. Even the Four Extremes mountain was very dangerous. If Xian didn't lead the way, Ci Hui might not have been able to find it. Therefore, what Xiao Hua saw was quite similar to the Dawn Rain continent. But not long after coming out of the Four Extremes mountain, the scenery of this paradise began to change. The climate gradually became hot, and a kind of warm and dry heat was constantly in the air. On the ground, there were also more greenery. Strange trees propped up the canopy, covering the increasingly dense mortals in the shade. Chapter 34:17. This strange tree was different from Dawn Rain continent and hidden Immortal continent. The thick tree trunk was like a pagoda in a temple, stacked up layer by layer. This tree trunk was also bare. No branches could be seen. Only when it reached the top of the tree crown did it extend several zhang-wide branches in all directions. The leaves that made up the tree crown were also interesting. They were like palm leaf fans. When the wind blew, the tree crown swayed, as if a big hand was shaking hundreds of palm leaf fans at the same time. The fruits of this strange tree also attracted Xiao Hua's attention. These fruits were different from spirit fruits and spirit trees. They were not hanging on the branches, but just stuck to the top of the tree crown, raised high. Moreover, each tree only bore 9 fruits. These fruits were of different sizes. The big ones were the size of a head, and the small ones were only the size of a fist. The fruits looked very strong. The green fruit skin tightly wrapped the fruit. Even if it fell from the top of the tree, the fruit would not be torn apart. The scenery was naturally in Xiao Hua's eyes, but what he paid attention to was the people in the scenery. The mortals of Elysium world were no different from hidden Immortal continent, but their skin was slightly darker, and their clothes were different. Most of the men wore short clothes, while the women wore light veils that covered their skin and faces. Of course, in addition to the secular people, most of them were ordinary monks. In Elysium world, there were many temples. These temples were either big or small, and the incense burning there was exuberant. Whenever Xiao Hua's Buddhist sense swept through the temples, he would see pious men and women kowtowing, offering incense, and giving money. Of course, Xiao Hua's Buddhist sense was often detected by the senior monks in the temples. At the beginning, Xiao Hua hurriedly withdrew his Buddhist sense, fearing that it would cause a misunderstanding. But after a long time, Xiao Hua found that not only did the Buddhist sense not have any hostility toward the temples, but it was also very kind. When it came into contact with his Buddhist sense, it would immediately withdraw, without any further warning. Elysium World. Is it really a Elysium world? Looking at the pious faces of the men and women, looking at the smiles on the faces of the monks, Xiao Hua sighed again. Are the people of Elysium world very satisfied? Alas, in this Zhao's opinion, Buddhism is a special sect among Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism. Rather than saying it is a cultivation method, it is better to say it is a kind of faith. Although soul cultivators also emphasized on the power of faith, their believers were all natives of Meng Mountains, and their range was limited. As for the Buddhist sect, because of the doctrine of Buddhism, everyone could believe in the Lord Buddha. Although the power of faith of a single person was weak, and could not be compared to the millions of natives in Meng Mountains, there were so many of them. Perhaps there were hundreds of millions of people in the entire Elysium. This level of power of faith. Holy shit, it should be enough for the Buddha Lord to become a Buddha. Or perhaps this belief was the root of happiness? Since they were all beliefs, what was the relationship between the 12 great gods of soul cultivation and the Buddha of Buddhism sect? Why does my Tao sect not have a Tao ancestor? Why doesn't our Tao sect have any faith? The more Xiao Hua thought about it, the more he thought about it. He had thought about it before, but at that time, it was all doubts and doubts. Now that he saw the prosperity of the Buddhist sect, he couldn't help but think deeply. Xi Hui opened her eyes and saw that Xiao Hua was also pondering with his eyes closed. She smiled and asked, "Junior brother Tipu, have you comprehended anything?" Xiao Hua didn't open his eyes. He smiled and said, "This little monk was a little tired just now, so I took a short rest." Only Xiao Hua himself could solve the problem of Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism. He didn't think that this Xi Hui, who only knew about Buddhism, could help him in any way. Look into the distance. We have arrived at the Saint River. Xi Hui didn't think it was a big deal. She pointed her finger into the distance and said with a smile, "Oh, so fast." Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat. He opened his eyes and looked into the distance. Sure enough, he saw a stretch of green water spreading between the heaven and earth. One end of the green water was connected to the mountain range and the green shade, while the other end was connected to the boundless sky. The green water in the distance was so close to the color of the sky that it was impossible to distinguish the boundary. It was as if the green water was the falling of the Milky Way. Looking at the green water again, there were white sails smaller than a handkerchief. Under the white sails, there were doll-like boats that didn't move for a long time. Xiao Hua understood that it wasn't that these boats didn't move, but rather that they were drifting like the big boats nearby. It was just that they were too far away from here. The distance that the big boats drifted over was too small in his eyes. Is this the South Sea or the Saint River? Xiao Hua was dumbfounded. Wasn't this river too wide? Nonsense. Where is the South Sea? This can only be the Saint River. Xi Hui lightly reprimanded Xiao Hua and said, "This Saint River is known as the origin of the two seas. Not only is it vast and magnificent, it crosses the Pure Land world and has thousands of tributaries that converge into it. Wherever the river reaches, there are hundreds of millions of Buddhists. I don't know how many Buddhists rely on the Saint River to survive." "What is that?" While speaking, Xiao Hua frowned and pointed his finger in a direction. "Oh!" Xi Hui didn't understand and followed Xiao Hua's finger. She saw that it was a river bay that was several li in size. The Saint River's water flowed slowly, circling and flowing between two hills. The hills were several li in size, forming a very calm river bay. The two hills were ordinary and not very tall. However, on the hills, there were two Buddha statues that were several zhang in size. Therefore, this river bay was different. At this time, on top of the hills, there were many men and women who climbed up with difficulty and piously prostrated themselves in front of the Buddha statues. Below the hills, the river bay was abnormally lively. What Xiao Hua said was a group of more than 10 people. Everyone in this group was wearing plain clothes. There were also some women with white flowers on their temples. In front of the group, there were several people carrying something that looked like a flower basket. However, in the flower basket, There were not only flowers, but also an old man who was lying naked in the flowers. The old man's hands were crossed in front of his chest. His eyes were tightly closed and his face revealed a kind of serene smile. This group of people walked to an empty spot at the side of Riverbend and slowly came to a stop. The few people at the front put down the flower baskets, and the 10 people at the back rushed forward. The woman plucked the white flowers from her temples and threw them into the flower baskets. Then, everyone worked together to lift the flower baskets and sent them into Riverbend. Although the river water in the river bay was gentle, it was still flowing. After the flower basket entered the river bay, it immediately floated into the river bay along with the river water. The flower basket was originally made of rattan. Just as it floated out several zhang, the river water immediately rushed in. The river water increased and gradually lifted the old man's body. Then, the flower basket gradually sank. Amitba! At the side of the river bay, the more than 10 men and women had smiles on their faces. Although there were some women with sparkling and translucent tears at the corners of their eyes, they still chanted the Buddhist scriptures in an abnormally pious manner. Following everyone's gaze, the flower basket sank to the bottom of the river bay. The old man's body was indeed half sinking and half floating, moving along with the river flow. It was very obvious that this was the old man's funeral. These more than 10 men and women should be the old man's children and relatives. If it was just this, Xiaohua might not be surprised. Whether it was the cremation of the old monk from the exquisite temple or the burial of the ordinary cultivators from the Xiaoyu continent, Xiaohua had seen them all. This water burial was not considered rare. However, this river bay was more than 10 li in size. Not only were there many people at the side of the river bay, there were also many people inside the river bay. Of the people inside the river bay, some were taking a bath, some were immersing themselves in the water devoutly. Of course, there were also some people who were floating on the water just like that. It was unknown whether they were dead or alive. The people outside the river bay, some were kneeling by the side of the river, kowtowing to the ground. It was unknown what their mouths were muttering. Some were prostrating themselves on the water, devoutly cupping the river water with their hands and drinking it in big mouthfuls. There were also some people who were holding a few boxes in their hands, splashing something into the river water. If Xiaohua was not surprised, it should be the embers of the corpse after the fire. When the old man's corpse slid into the river water, there were still a few people who were wildly drinking the river water. These people only slightly moved to the side. Then, they simply ignored the old man and continued to pour the river water into their mouths. As for the old man's corpse floating by, the people in the river water turned a blind eye to it. They simply did not care. The people in the river water did not pay attention to the old man's corpse. However, the fish in the water and the birds in the sky did. Not long after the old man's corpse floated into the river bay, fat river fish swam over and surrounded the naked corpse in the water. On the river surface, several birds also flew down, either eating the river fish or swallowing the corpse. As for the old man's son on the riverbank, not only did he not anxiously chase away the birds and fish, his face was instead filled with joy. These people, aren't they too crazy? Xiaohua looked at the inconceivable actions of the various people in the river bay and unconsciously became dumbstruck. He whispered, Amitba. Ci Hui, however, acted as if this was a common occurrence. She chanted Buddha's name and laughed. What's so strange about this? Junior brother Tipu is a bit obsessed. Junior brother Tipu, don't you know? Although this saint river has the title of a Confucian saint, our Buddhist sect has never planned to change its name. However, this great river that runs through the Pure Land world already has no name in the hearts of billions of Buddhist people. Whether it is called Saint River or Buddha River, in the hearts of Buddhist people, it is only a Buddha river. It is a river that is unique in the hearts of billions of Buddhist people. It is a river that is filled with the blessings of Buddha, a river that carries the past life, present life and future life of Buddhist people. Looking at Xiaohua's slightly frowning appearance, Ci Hui excitedly said, Junior brother Tipu, seeing this scene, could it be that you are not happy? Could it be that you don't feel that this is the eternal state of Buddha's light in our Pure Land world? Do you know that this great river is connected to the land of bliss in the hearts of Buddhist people? The origin of this river is the exit of the land of bliss. The destination of this river is the entrance of the land of bliss. Look at that newborn baby boy. After he was washed in this river, he received the blessings of Buddha. As for that old man who just passed away, He washed the dust of his life here. His dirty and smelly skin was left in the river. His clean soul flowed into the land of bliss along with the river. Chapter 34:18. This. Xiaohua bitterly smiled and slightly shook his head. Isn't Saint River the source of the two seas? When did it connect to the land of bliss? That's the truth. Xianxia vigorously nodded and pointed at the distant white sails on the river. This is something that cultivators like us can know. However, how many of these Buddhists can walk along this Saint River? Even those fishing boats on the river have never gone from the West Sea to the East Sea, right? How do they know where this Saint River came from and where it went? Even if they have never seen it and never went there, they might not have never heard of it, right? Xiaohua continued to argue. They naturally have heard of it, and they even know that this river is called Saint River. Just like what Junior Brother said before, this saint is a special name for Confucian cultivators. It has nothing to do with my Buddhist sect. But do they believe it? Will they even listen? Xianxia smiled. Not to mention that there are hundreds and thousands of such legends. They are devout Buddhists of my Pure Land world. Their hearts have long been illuminated by my Buddha's light. They will not tolerate other filth. Hundreds and thousands of legends. They only believe my Buddha's words. Amitabha, this little monk understands. Xiaohua slightly sighed. He already understood the trick. Previously, he was still thinking about the benefits of faith. Now he saw the drawbacks of faith. To believe and be true is to be devout, but to believe and be foolish is to be evil. But who is devout and who is evil, how can Buddhists know? They can't jump out of the well. They can't distinguish the direction of the river. Only cultivators like Xiaohua who can jump out of the well can clearly see the direction of the river. However, thinking about the great formation at the bottom of the West Sea and the vast border of the three continents, Xiaohua shuddered. He really doesn't know how deep this well is. While speaking, the azure lion has already flown over this river bend. At the place where the river bend enters the river, the old man's corpse that Xiaohua just saw once again emerged a few times and slowly sank into the depths of the river. At the place where the corpse sank, a few small whirlpools appeared. These whirlpools also disappeared in a flash. Looking at the place where the whirlpools disappeared, from time to time, a few white bones emerged from the river. It seems to be the corpses that were previously buried in the water. How dirty is this river? Xiaohua looked. He was too lazy to talk to the excited Xianxia. His heart felt a chill. Fortunately, as the azure lion flew into the heart of the river, the water became increasingly green. The things that could be seen at the river's edge also disappeared. Some fish that were unwilling to be left out also rejoiced. Flocks of birds also flew from the side to join in the fun. It made Xiaohua's somewhat gloomy heart. Xian didn't pay attention to Xiaohua and Xianxia. She rode the strange bird and flew in front of Gu Zhen. The two of them kept talking about something. They seemed to be discussing how to enter the danger zone. At this moment, she led the three of them straight into the heart of the river. Seeing a strangely shaped reef emerging from the river, she stopped again and looked at it. Then, she patted the strange bird's neck again and flew towards the upper reaches of the Saint River. After flying for half a day, he finally stopped. He turned his head and looked at Xiaohua and Xianxia who were following behind him. He faintly pointed below and said, "It's here." Here. Before Xianxia could speak, Gu Zhen, who was standing next to Xian, had a strange look on his face. He seemed to be in disbelief as he said, "Is Xian Tanyue wrong? This is the famous Nightmare Reef Bay of the Sage River. How could it be the location of the Dao Sex Array Formation? What's impossible?" Xian smiled and said, "Taoism's array formations are unpredictable to begin with. Moreover, this is a forbidden area passed down from ancient times." That's right. I'm not denying Taoism's formation, nor am I doubting Tan Yu's discovery. I just feel that countless Buddhist seniors have come here to explore for thousands of years. How could they not find any clues? Gu Zhen seemed to have lost his composure at this moment. His expression became even more anxious as he hurriedly asked. When Xiaohua heard the two's words, he glanced at Xianxia's frown and lowered his head to look at the river. He saw that the river's surface was completely different from before. The other parts of the river were completely calm. Even if there were some surging waves, they were ordinary waves. After the waves passed, the river's surface was completely flat. The river had a circumference of a few miles, and was filled with whirlpools of different sizes. These whirlpools were letting out strange moaning noises, and gusts of strong wind were blowing in and out of the river, wreaking havoc in this area. Also, these whirlpools looked disorderly, but there was a dark gray shadow between 2 or 3 whirlpools. This shadow couldn't be dispelled even under the scorching sun. Xiaohua didn't dare to release his spiritual sense. The chaotic wind around his nose already told him that the world's spiritual energy here was extremely chaotic. It wasn't the kind of order that was commonly seen in Taoism's array formations. Xiaohua glanced at the strangeness of the river and asked Xi Hui in a low voice, "Is there a saying in Nightmare Reef Bay?" Xi Hui also shifted her gaze away from the river and said with a bitter smile, "It's not just a saying. It's simply a notorious name. This body of water is extremely strange. If a feather falls on it, even if it doesn't get sucked into a whirlpool, it won't float on the river's surface. How can we still find a corpse? Even if there are, how many corpses have been piled up since ancient times? How can we still distinguish them?" Grandmaster. Gu Zhen's reaction was very strange. Not only did Xiaohua and Xian see the abnormality, but Xi Hui was also somewhat puzzled. She asked in a low voice, "Is there something wrong with you?" "Haha, it's nothing." Gu Zhen grinned. "This old monk just has a slight feeling and thought of the past." Then Gu Zhen urged again, "New Tanyue, how do we enter this ancient formation?" "Great master, don't worry." Xian said with a smile. "This little girl naturally has a way to enter the formation. It's just that it takes time to enter this formation, so we'll have to wait here for a while." Gu Zhen raised his thick white eyebrows and asked in a low voice, "Could it be that we have to wait for that illusion to appear?" Xiaohua's heart also thumped, seeming to understand something. Fortunately, Xian hurriedly explained, "Great master, this little girl doesn't know whether the illusion of the Nightmare Reef Rock is related to the formation, but according to the records, entering the formation doesn't need to go through any illusion formation, but we still have to wait until dusk or sunset." Sunset? Hearing this, Xiaohua and the other two involuntarily raised their heads. However, at this moment, the sky was covered with dark clouds. How could they see the sun? When the 3 people's puzzled gazes fell on Xian's face, she clapped her hands and took out an ink cloud pupil. She said with a wry smile, "The situation inside is all in this ink cloud pupil, but there are some origin formation restrictions inside that others can't see." Chapter 34:19. It doesn't matter. Gu Zhen waved his hand and said, "Since this old monk knows your identity and has accompanied you to this place, we must enter this formation. Since others can't see Mo Yuntong, this old monk naturally can't see it either, so there's no need for me to look. Everything inside will be done according to Nutanyu's instructions." "What about fellow immortal Xi Hui?" Xian smiled and looked at Xi Hui. Xi Hui shrugged and answered very seriously, "Nutanyu has held onto this Mo Yuntong for a long time, right? She seems to have never wanted this little monk to look at it. Since that's the case, why should this little monk look at it?" Xiaohua found Xi Hui's shrugging action very familiar. "Isn't this what I often do? I don't know when monk Xi Hui secretly learned it from me." However, Xiaohua just looked and didn't say anything. He blinked his eyes and looked at the water below him. In his opinion, Xian must be treating him as nothing like before. Little monk Ti-Pu unexpectedly, Xian raised her hand and held the Mo Yuntong in front of Xiaohua's eyes. She smiled and said, "Do you want to take a look?" "Me?" Xiaohua was slightly stunned. He looked at Xian in disbelief and said, "Benefactress still remembers this little monk. This little monk thought you wouldn't ask about it like before. How could that be? Everything before didn't involve entering the formation. Now that we're going to work together to enter the forbidden area, how can this one not ask for your opinion?" Xian said seriously, "Although the result is the same as not being able to see it, this one still has to ask. My little monk master wants to take a look." From what Benefactress said, Buddhist awareness can't see through this Mo Yuntong. Xiaohua said with a smile. Xian frowned and said, "That's right. This one already said it before. What if this little monk can see it?" Xiaohua stretched out his hand and was about to grab the Mo Yuntong in Xian's hand. Just as Xiaohua expected, Xian didn't withdraw her hand and even stretched it forward a bit. She smiled and said, "It's best if this little monk can see it, so that I won't have to say anything in the future and fellow Immortal Ci Hui can rest assured." Xiao Hua withdrew his hand as soon as he touched Mo Yuntong. He looked at Xian's dark and rough face and said with a smile, "Since Buddhist awareness can't see it, why should I? Even senior brother Ci Hui is at ease with you, so why can't this little monk be at ease?" "Humph. Why do I feel like this little monk doesn't trust me?" Xian snorted and withdrew her hand. "Ha ha ha, I've never met you before, benefactress. I've just shaved my head and entered Buddhism, but you've already tricked me into leaving the mountain. Who knows what you're up to?" Xiao Hua placed his hands behind his back and laughed loudly. "Now that we're about to enter the ancient array formation, what's wrong with this little monk asking a few more questions and probing a few more times? Don't tell me that I, the Arhat of Buddhism, am someone who can be easily fooled?" Cough cough. Without waiting for Xian to say anything, Ci Hui coughed twice and said in a low voice, "Junior brother Tipu, pay attention to your image. You are now a disciple of my Buddhist school. Speaking nonsense will damage your merit." Cough cough. Hearing Ci Hui's reminder, Xiao Hua couldn't help but cough. This was going deep into the ancient array formation. Their lives could be in danger at any time. According to Xiao Hua's knowledge, Ci Hui didn't seem to know Xian's origin and background. They were just friends. How could Ci Hui trust Xian so much? She didn't even ask about the situation inside the array formation and wanted to follow her in? If she was used as a cover or something, wouldn't her death be in vain? His probing like this didn't seem to be excessive, right? Could it be that this Buddhist disciple's behavior and sitting posture were more important than her life? Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. He looked at Ci Hui and then at Xian and said, "There's still some time before dusk. If Benefactress Xian has the heart, you might as well tell this little monk and others the details of this ancient array formation in Mo Yuntong. Although I'll listen to Benefactress's arrangements, if we listen to her in advance, we'll at least know what to do, right? Or we can also give Benefactress some suggestions." Hearing this, Xian nodded slightly. She looked up at the sky and said, "Little monk, you're right. Although I've already told fellow Immortal Ci Hui some things, now we'd better discuss it properly." However, when Xian told him what she knew, Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Because according to Xian, this was indeed an ancient array formation. However, as for what kind of array formation it was and how many dangers there were, she didn't know. Of course, it was impossible for her to know what kind of ancient array it was. What she knew was how to enter the magic formation, and that there was a fairy weapon left behind by the immortal realm in the magic formation. As for why Xian was confident that she could break into the magic formation and get the fairy weapon, it was because Mo Yuntong had recorded several dangerous parts of the magic formation, and she had prepared several imperial weapons and celestial devices according to Mo Yuntong's description. "Great Hant," Xiao Hua almost blurted out. You want to break into the ancient array formation and obtain the immortal tool with these things? You're too imaginative, aren't you? You think I want to?" Xian clenched her teeth. Her face slightly flushed. She took out Mo Yuntong again and shouted, "This Mo Yuntong was originally incomplete. When I checked it, I also forcibly broke the restriction. It's already good that I know these things. If you can do it, you can see for yourself." "In that case," Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, "Little Monk suggests that we treat this as a sightseeing tour. Little Monk will pretend that he didn't hear about this array formation. You and I will rest here for a while and look at the nearby scenery. Then we'll cup our hands and say goodbye. How about we go about our own business?" "Junior brother Dipu," Ci Hui said with a smile. "Could it be that you didn't want to enter this array formation before? Aren't you interested in the ancient Buddha's fortune inside?" Xiao Hua shrugged and said with a smile, "Benefactor Xian said it well. Little Monk was originally here to join in the fun. If there was Master Fontian's magic tool, Little Monk wouldn't have come. Now that Master Guzhan is here, Little Monk's role as a Buddhist disciple is also gone. Little Monk has never been interested in treasure hunting. Little Monk came with Senior Brother just to listen to Senior Brother talk about Buddhism and enjoy it." Beside him, Guzhan looked at Xiao Hua and said in all seriousness, "Little Monk, what you think makes sense? However, if it was another array formation, Little Monk might persuade Xianxia to stop. But this is the Nightmare Reef's array formation. Even if Xianxia stops now, Little Monk will still try it. Why? Xianxia wanted to persuade Xiaohua, but when she heard Gu Zhen's words, she couldn't help but be stunned. Could it be that the junior brother mentioned by Master? Xianxia's face was green and red because of Xiaohua's words. She was a little angry. Now her heart was moved and she said anxiously, "Could it be Master's?" "Yes." Gu Zhen raised his head and sighed. Looking at the gloomy clouds, a trace of tears actually flashed in the corner of his eyes. That junior brother of this old monk is this old monk's younger brother. When Xianxia said this, everyone's heart was heavy. Xiaohua had already felt that this junior brother might have some connection with Gu Zhen, but he didn't expect them to be so close. When this old monk was young, my family was poor. Before my younger brother was born, my father passed away. This old monk was only 4 years old at that time. My impression of my father was very shallow. After father passed away, mother was the only one who took care of old Na and my younger brother. Life was extremely difficult. When old Na was 10 years old, our family encountered a rare flood. Even now, old Na can still clearly remember that day when the waves reached the sky. Mother only had time to remove a door plank before the entire house was engulfed by the flood. That door plank was very small and could only fit this old monk and my 6-year-old younger brother. My mother could only hold the corner of the door plank with her hand. Gu Zhen took a deep breath and said tirelessly, "After drifting with the flood for more than half a day, my mother's strength was already exhausted. But this old monk was young at that time and didn't know about this. Plus, the flood had already overflowed and I had already lost my cool. When my mother told me to look after my younger brother, this old monk didn't think the worst of it and only nodded. But before her mother could finish her warning, a fist-sized beam came along with the flood and smashed her mother into the flood. This old monk was stupefied. My younger brother cried and wanted to crawl under the flood under the door plank. It was at that moment that this old monk knew that in this life, I was the only one my younger brother could rely on. This old monk seemed to have suddenly grown 10 years older. I hurriedly held my younger brother in my arms and coaxed him, saying that it was mother who went to the bottom of the river to catch fish for us. See. Even Xiaohua, who was used to seeing life and death parting, felt his nose sour. Beside him, Xianxia's eyes were even redder. Fortunately, when the middle of the night passed, the masters of Jianghu Temple and other places had already arrived. The lucky survivors were all rescued. Because this old monk and my younger brother had no home to return to, we followed our masters to Jianghu Temple. After a few more years, this old monk and my younger brother shaved their heads and became monks at the same time. This old monk's Buddhist name was Gu Zhen and my younger brother's Buddhist name was Gu Nian. Gu Nian was exceptionally intelligent since childhood, far surpassing this old monk by 100 times. At a young age, he cultivated into the mortal realm. Therefore, he obtained the favor of the Sutra Depository Elder, who prepared to accept him as a disciple and personally instruct him. It was on the eve of the apprenticeship ceremony that this old monk received the abbot's decree to deliver a letter to a place. This matter was originally this old monk's, but this old monk was naturally reciting Buddha's Diamond Sutra and became lazy. When Gu Nian saw this, he volunteered to go in this old monk's place. At this time, Gu Zhen's emotions were already somewhat out of control. Who knew that once he left, he would never come back? Later, not only did the seniors of the temple search for him many times, this old monk also secretly sneaked into this place. However, they also found nothing. From then on, whenever this old monk thought of mother's entrustment and thought of Gu Nian dying for this old monk, my heart would ache. After that, this old monk even made a vow in front of Buddha, that in this life, I would find Gu Nian's corpse and comfort my mother's spirit in heaven. For this reason, this old monk ignored my master's advice and stepped into the guardian domain. I learned the power of the Diamond Sutra and cast the body of Buddha, eliminating evil and protecting Buddha. This is because I want to rely on my Buddhist divine ability to one day enter deep into the Nightmare Reef. Chapter 34:20. At this point, Gu Zhen looks at Xiaohua, then at Xianxia and Xianxia. He says word by word, "Previously, I didn't dare to face it because I didn't have the confidence. Now that Buddha has used your hands to lure me here, How can I not take the risk and fulfill my wish? Hiss. Xiao Hua gasps and murmurs, Ba, it can't be such a coincidence, right? After hearing this, Ci Hui's face turns solemn. She looks at Gu Zhan and says, Martial ancestor, although this little monk's Buddhist cultivation is shallow, I have some attainments in Buddhist magic. This little monk is not talented, but I'm willing to follow martial ancestor inside to explore. Xian clenches her teeth and says in a low voice, sad things all have similar reasons. Since we're all in the same boat, this little girl is also willing to accompany Great Master inside. Although this little girl doesn't know much about arrays. At this point, Xian suddenly realizes something. She turns to look at Xiao Hua and scolds, Little monk! How dare you make fun of me? Seeing that Xian scolds him without waiting for him to express his determination, Xiao Hua becomes furious. Little girl, what do I have to make fun of you? If you want to go, then go. If you don't want to go, then don't go. Junior brother, pay attention to your manners. You're now a Buddhist disciple. Ci Hui hurriedly says, don't violate the precepts of anger and make Buddha unhappy. Who said that you have to understand the array thoroughly before entering? If Mo Yuntong explained the array clearly, then how could the immortal tool still be inside? Xian stared at Xiao Hua and said, just like you said, if we can explain the details of the array clearly, then we'll be going on a sightseeing tour. It's because you don't want to go in, that's why you're accusing me. Hee hee. Xiao Hua smiles, showing his snow-white teeth. Xian's words are reasonable. As long as there's a danger zone, it's already good to have some information about it. How can you understand the situation of the danger zone in detail? The reason why Xiao Hua doesn't want to go in is that he doesn't want to be a shield for others. And now, Gu Zhan was determined to go in, for the sake of his heart, not for the sake of his long-cherished wish. Xiao Hua would definitely help such a kind person. Moreover, this was the Dao Sect's formation. Even if Xiao Hua was not proficient in formations, he was still a genuine Dao Sect disciple. With him around, wouldn't the three of them have a greater chance of survival? Seeing Xiao Hua smiling and not answering her question, Xian felt embarrassed. She stamped her feet in the air and said, Little monk, are you going or not? If you're going, then let's get it over with. If you're not going, then hurry up and leave. Xiao Hua faintly smiled, looked at Ci Hui and said, Senior brother Ci Hui, do you think this little monk should go or not? Ci Hui smiled but did not answer. She used her index finger to point at her own chest. Cruel and unscrupulous? Xiao Hua stared blankly and asked curiously. Ci Hui's figure swayed slightly, and she managed to stand firm in midair. She said angrily, Ask your conscience. I do have a conscience, but I can't find my moral integrity. Xiao Hua stretched and said, When you need this little monk, tell this little monk. If you don't, then this little monk will hide behind senior brother. Hee hee, this little monk has a glib tongue. Why is he so similar to those pale-faced scholars of Confucian cultivation? Xian smiled. Don't worry, with Master Gu Zhan here, you won't be needed. You can just follow along and watch the show. I hope so. Xiao Hua shrunk his neck. Fellow Immortal Ci Hui. Xian rolled her eyes at Xiao Hua and said to Ci Hui, This one remembers that you know Buddhism's heavenly feat, and your cultivation is quite amazing. It's not amazing, but since heavenly feat is called heart's desire, this little monk can go anywhere within 1,000 feet at will, in just a blink of an eye. Ci Hui nodded without reservation. This is also one of the main reasons why this one invited fellow Immortal. Xian said, The first stage of this array is the most difficult. The array will only open for a few breaths of time, and in this few breaths of time, the entire water area within a few miles will be sealed. If not for a special ability, it's impossible to enter. And as long as someone enters the array during this few breaths of time, the entrance of the array will stop. Of course, this period of time is also very short, but for us who are around the 4th grade of origin energy, it's nothing much. This little monk understands. Ci Hui nodded. This little monk is willing to take the lead and tear open the entrance of this array. Good, Xian nodded happily, and then explained to Ci Hui in detail for a while. The two of them didn't talk behind anyone's back, and they didn't transmit their voices, so Xiaohua heard everything clearly. Although the situation described by Xian wasn't very clear, Xiaohua already knew that this was definitely a Dao Sex array. Xian's words weren't false, and he couldn't help but feel a bit sad. Hi, this time. This Xiao seems to have been forced to do something beyond his ability again. After Xian and Ci Hui's discussion, the three of them put away their mounts. Xian took out the ink cloud pupil and placed it on her forehead to look for a moment, then released her origin energy and searched within a few miles, and then brought the three of them to fly towards the east side of the thousands of whirlpools. Woo-woo! Just as the four of them were flying, suddenly, a loud whimpering sound rang out, and within a few miles, waves of ghostly wailing and wolf howling could be heard. Xiaohua lowered his head to look, and the large and small whirlpools suddenly trembled rapidly. This was the source of the commotion, and the speed at which the spiritual qi of heaven and earth was absorbed increased. The hurricane formed by the spiritual qi of heaven and earth fell into the water, and when it rushed into the whirlpool, it condensed into a sound. Swoosh! Without waiting for the others to make a move, Xian stretched out her hand, and took out an emerald green handkerchief from her sleeve. With a shake of her hand, she threw it into the air. Clouds and mist gushed out from the handkerchief, and after absorbing the noble qi, it turned into a cloud that covered everyone's head, and immediately blocked the hurricane. Woo-woo! 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 The whimpering sound in the water rose and fell one after another, like a frightening melody. The rhythm was like a tide that rushed into everyone's ears. Amitabha! Ci Hui chanted Buddha's name, and his hands formed the Akala seal. The Buddha's light emitted from his body, and also covered the four of them, and that frightening melody could no longer enter. Quickly look! Xian suddenly pointed with her hand, and cheerfully called out. Following the direction that Xian pointed, a trembling tornado gradually appeared in the thousands of whirlpools along with the melody. These tornadoes gradually gathered, and when they reached a height of 100 zhang, they suddenly whistled, like a wind dragon rushing to the western horizon. That hurricane was so big, first it was dozens of li, then it was hundreds of li. The spiritual qi of heaven and earth in this area was sucked into it, and it was like an unyielding wind dragon roaring as it rapidly expanded, and directly rushed into the thick clouds. Swoosh! The hurricane rushed into the clouds, and a hole of dozens of li in size appeared to be insignificant in the endless clouds. However, it was also very mysterious. From this insignificant hole in the clouds, a ray of light shot out, like an orange sort of light falling on Xiaohua and the others, and sprinkled over the dozens of li of water around the nightmare reef. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and looked at the hole in the clouds. In the slanted horizon, there was a touch of the afterglow of the setting sun, and it was rather reluctant to part with the grayish-blue dusk. The ancient array is indeed extraordinary. Xiaohua sighed slightly. He could also be considered a grandmaster array master, and when he saw the array open, his thoughts were different from others. If this Xiao was the one setting up the array, I really wouldn't know how to set up an array that corresponds to the time. However, when he thought of this, Xiaohua's heart moved. Oh, perhaps this array doesn't pursue the details, it should be related to... Right, it should be related to the power of the sun and moon. If this Xiao knew how to use the power of the sun, moon, and stars in an array, I think I can also set up such a mysterious array. While Xiaohua was pondering, the ray of light that fell on the several li of water had a beautiful change. The orange ray of light first spread out on the water surface, and then it actually followed the ripples of the water and converged towards the thousands of whirlpools. When the rays of light entered the whirlpools, the entire water body let out a low roar, and the water surface gradually rose. However, it rose by more than 3 inches. The thousands of whirlpools suddenly froze, and the orange ray of light also froze, like thousands of morning stars. This freezing only lasted for an instant, and then all the whirlpools suddenly reversed, and the rays of light within the whirlpools rushed out, rapidly swaying within several li. Every ray of light formed a palm-sized light shadow in the air, and the thousands of light shadows swayed in confusion, as if they were dancing with a group of demons, and it was even more bizarre. This. Xiaohua's gaze swept over, and his eyes flashed with confusion. The space above the water body was restricted by the array, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was already thin. These flashing lights didn't cause any fluctuations, and he really didn't understand how to open the array. Fellow Immortal Ci Hui, at this moment, Xian's voice was filled with excitement, and she hurriedly said, The ancient array has restricted divine sense and has very little effect on Buddhist sense. In particular, there is no spiritual energy of heaven and earth here, and even the noble qi is a restriction, so your Buddhist divine ability is also very little affected. If you see a door appear in this light shadow, it's a door. As for what the door looks like, and where it appears, according to the records, it's not fixed. Just as we've discussed before, fellow Immortal can immediately use the heart intent technique to enter. Xianxia had already released her Buddhist sense, and her eyes were also unblinkingly staring at the light shadow swaying irregularly in the sky above the water body. She didn't dare to be negligent in the slightest, and only answered casually. Seeing Xianxia, Xian, and Gu Zhan all staring at the light shadow in the sky, Xiaohua frowned, but his eyes were fixed on the whirlpools above the water. After all, he was a formation grandmaster, and he knew that the changes of light-shadow came from the whirlpools. Tracing back to the source, if he wanted to find the pattern of the changes of light-shadow, he still had to look at the whirlpools. Moreover, if the three of them were looking at the light shadow in the sky, Xiaohua wouldn't be delayed by looking at the side alone. Chapter 34:21. After looking at it for a moment, Xiaohua's eyes became a little dizzy. Those vortexes were spinning rapidly. Anyone who looked at them for a long time would feel dizzy. Damn it! Xiaohua shook his head and closed his eyes, but there seemed to be more than a dozen vortexes in front of him. However, the vortexes in front of him were black and white and had already stopped spinning. Suddenly, Xiaohua's mind lit up and he almost cried out, "Spinning!" Since the light shadow was in the vortexes and the vortexes were spinning, then the spinning was naturally the source of the light shadow. Thinking of this, Xiaohua raised his eyes and looked again. He saw that the more than a dozen vortexes were spinning at different levels, at different heights and at different speeds. He couldn't see any pattern at all. Xiaohua looked for a moment and seemed to see something. The rotation of the more than a dozen vortexes was changing at every moment, and every change affected the light shadow in the air. However, after Xiaohua looked for a moment and even released his Buddhist sense to carefully observe for a while, he had no choice but to give up. After all, there were tens of thousands of vortexes. There were tens of thousands of spinning vortexes inside, and each rotation seemed to have an extremely subtle pattern. When these tens of thousands of patterns were put together, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was a mess. Wanting to find a way to enter the array formation in a short time was indeed somewhat unrealistic. When Xiaohua raised his head and looked at the light shadow and the three people who were concentrating, Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Alas, this Xiao is a bit of a dead end. This Xiao isn't here to set up the array, let alone to break it. I just need to find a way to enter the array. Since this Xiao knows that the light shadow is spinning, I don't need to look at the changes of the light shadow like them. However, I also don't need to find the pattern of the rotation of these vortexes. With this thought, Xiaohua closed his eyes. His Buddhist sense fell on the water like a cool breeze, and it was as if Xiaohua's heart had calmed down. Xian had been paying attention to Xiaohua. Seeing that he wasn't looking at the light shadow and was looking at the water instead, she had already frowned. Now that he saw that Xiaohua had actually closed his eyes and only released his Buddhist sense to scan the water, he was even more puzzled. A trace of vigilance appeared in his heart. He looked at the light shadow and then looked at Xiaohua. Xiaohua's origin was a bit strange. Xian had also asked Xianxia about it through voice transmission. Although Xianxia had never seen Xiaohua use Buddhist supernatural powers, based on Xiaohua's Buddhist awareness alone, Xianxia knew that Xiaohua's Buddhist supernatural powers might not be inferior to hers. This kind of person with an unknown origin and uncontrollable cultivation base was not a good choice to travel with them. However, Xianxia had also sensed Xiaohua's deep roots of wisdom through the debate of Buddhist principles. He was not the kind of evil person that Xian thought he was. That was why she insisted on bringing Xiaohua along. Seeing that they were about to enter the array and Xiaohua's strange behavior, how could Xian not be vigilant? Senior brother Xianxia, you have to be careful. After another half a cup of tea or so, there might be an abnormality. Right when Xian was vigilant, Xiaohua suddenly spoke out. Xian was shocked and anxiously asked, how did you know? Xiaohua's heart had calmed down, so he could see more. In his Buddhist sense, the thousands of whirlpools were like thousands of spinning tops, spinning crookedly. After looking at them for a while, Xiaohua understood that although these whirlpools had different shapes and sizes, as long as the rotation of the whirlpools reached a certain pattern, it would produce a special change. And the simplest part of this pattern was that it was the same. Since he knew that the rotation of the whirlpools was the same, Xiaohua only observed for a moment before he made a decision in his heart and casually reminded Ci Hui. Hee, this little monk's intuition may not be true. Xiaohua didn't have time to explain. Moreover, he didn't know whether what he said was correct or not, so he vaguely replied. Xian slightly curled her lips. She wanted to look at the water, but she didn't dare to give up on the light shadow in the air. She simply ignored Xiaohua and focused on looking at the sky. Since he knew that the whirlpools were the same, the door to the formation could be opened. Xiaohua began to calculate where the entrance to the formation would open. Although Buddhist sense was the best at observing minute details and was very useful in observing the whirlpools, Xiaohua also understood that the opening of the formation's entrance was definitely related to the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. If he wanted to know the location of the entrance, he could only use his divine sense to observe the changes in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, or even use his transcendence vision. Of course, Xiaohua was now a little monk of the Buddhist sect, so it wasn't suitable for him to use his divine sense. If he used his transcendence vision, it would be somewhat overkill. After thinking for a moment, Xiaohua released his soul sense. Sure enough, after scanning with his soul sense, Xiaohua understood that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth above the water had been confined. Looking at the thousands of whirlpools, he saw spiritual energy of different sizes. However, these spiritual energies were condensed into threads, directly coming out from the center of the whirlpools. They wantonly swayed in the air like thousands of branches, messy and disorderly. The time it took to drink half a cup of tea quickly passed. As time passed, these threads condensed from spiritual energy of heaven and earth began to move in an orderly manner, gradually moving in front of Xiaohua and the others. An irregular shape of several feet in size gradually appeared. Haha, this is the formation's entrance? Xiaohua was overjoyed. Just as he was about to open his mouth to warn them, he suddenly froze, a layer of cold sweat appearing on his back. No! How could it be so simple? If such weak soul sense could discover the formation's entrance, then wouldn't the Taoist sect's divine sense be able to discover it easily? Why would we need to look for some light portal? Hurry! Over there! Just as Xiaohua was hesitating, Gu Zhen's voice rang out, pointing at a place several li away from the group. Xiaohua hastily raised his head. Sure enough, over 10 zhang in the air, thousands of light shadows suddenly condensed together, slowly forming a 3-meter-wide orange-red portal. Along with Gu Zhen's voice, Ci Hui's body flashed with faint Buddhist light. She put her palms together, chanted, Amitba, and raised her left foot slightly. It was with this raise of her left foot that Ci Hui's figure disappeared before everyone's eyes. A wisp of Buddhist light streaked through the air, rushing toward the portal in the air. Let's go! As soon as Ci Hui's figure disappeared, Xian urged them once more. Xiaohua and the others didn't dare delay, each urging their own cloud to follow. As they flew, Xiaohua's soul sense swept out once more, only to see that the portal formed by the world's spiritual energy was gradually disappearing. In the gap that hadn't completely disappeared, there was a wisp of red light flashing through. Hurry, hurry! Xiaohua had just retracted his soul sense when he heard Xian's urgent voice. Raising his head, he saw that several kilometers away, a door had already appeared. But just like the previous lights and shadows, the door began to crumble as soon as it appeared. After all, it was several kilometers away. Even with Xiaohua's lightning escape, there was no way he could make it in such a short amount of time. Isn't this just a test of luck? Xiaohua smiled bitterly. If we're lucky, it'll be right next to us. If we're unlucky, it'll be like today. How can we possibly get in? Without waiting for the Buddhist light to reach the portal, Xiaohua and the others had only flown a few li away. The 1 zhang wide portal had already collapsed into 1 qi, and the orange light was about to disappear. But at this moment, the Buddhist light suddenly flourished and then disappeared. When Xiaohua and the others hurriedly looked at the portal, a faint Buddhist light flashed, and Ci Hui's figure appeared there with the Buddhist light. Damn it! This is the heavenly feat! Xiaohua was shocked. Isn't this the teleportation of the physical body? That's right, Nascent soul teleportation is a divine ability of nascent soul cultivators, and only nascent soul cultivators can teleport. The physical body of a nascent soul cultivator can't teleport. But this Xianxia's heavenly feat allowed her to instantly fly a few li away. She was even more powerful than a late nascent soul cultivator of the Dao sect. While Xiaohua was shocked, Xianxia seemed to have received Xianxia's instructions. As soon as she appeared in front of the portal, she immediately rushed in. Fortunately, although the portal was only 1 qi wide, Xianxia had the appearance of a child and her figure was also short, so it was easy for her to enter. Xianxia's figure disappeared into the portal, and the portal immediately stopped collapsing. However, the light around the portal was still shaking with all its might, as if a shabby wooden door was trembling in the wind and would collapse at any moment. Good. Xian almost clapped her hands. Then she urged the auspicious cloud and said, "Let's speed up too. This portal won't last long." In fact, there was no need for Xian to say more. When Xiaohua and Gu Zhan saw the portal in such a state, they had already urged the auspicious cloud under their feet to rush forward. The distance of several li wasn't too far, but now that they were in such a hurry, it felt like an insurmountable moat. Fortunately, Xianxia entered the door first. Although Xiaohua didn't know that Xianxia was inside the door's brilliance flickered and collapsed like paper several times. However, every time, it would stand up straight as if it had been reignited from the ashes, waiting for Xian to arrive first. Xian didn't stop at all. She turned her head and called out, "Master Gu Zhen, I'll go in first. You can come in when you arrive." Without waiting for Gu Zhen to speak, Xian plunged into the small portal and disappeared with a flash of green energy. Xiaohua didn't fly very fast. He followed Gu Zhen. When the two arrived in front of the portal, Xiaohua looked at the small and twisted portal, then looked at Gu Zhen's tall figure and said with a wry smile, "Master, how do we go in?" "What's so difficult about that?" Gu Zhen laughed and chanted the name of Buddha. Amitabha. As Gu Zhen's voice fell, Gu Zhen's body also flashed with a faint Buddhist light. Without any sound, Gu Zhen's figure slowly shrank. He lifted his foot and walked towards the portal. Step by step, Master Gu Zhen actually turned into a 1 qi tall human figure and walked in safely. Everyone has their own tricks. At this moment, Xiaohua also sighed with emotion at the wonders of the Buddhist sect's methods. The bones in his body made a slight sound. His figure shrank a little and he also rushed into the portal. As Xiaohua entered, the portal finally couldn't hold on anymore. It twisted a few times and turned into pieces of inexplicable orange-red light and shadow that scattered in the air. Of course, the orange-red light and shadow didn't last for long. In a moment, the thick clouds in the sky closed and darkness enveloped the water region. The waves in the water region retreated and the whirlpool rotated again. Whimpers like the cries of ghosts filled the dark night sky again. Chapter 34-22. Swish. With a sound of water, Xiaohua's mouth and nose are suddenly flooded with ice-cold river water. It's like he's plunging into a saint river. Xiaohua wants to use the water avoidance art without hesitation, but just as the true essence in his meridians is surging, the river water in front of him instantly disappears. Not far away, Xian is holding a goose egg-sized bead in her hand. That bead is emitting a blue brilliance, blocking the river water within 100 feet. It's a water avoidance bead. Standing on the left side of Xian is Gu Zhen, whose body has transformed into the size of an ordinary person. Sitting on the right side of Xian is Xianxia, whose face is dark red. On the contrary, Xian's gaze falls on Xiaohua. Her eyes flash with a pensive expression. She says faintly, "Little monk, I have to thank you. If not for you being able to accurately predict the formation door's appearance, we wouldn't have been able to enter this place even with immortal friend Xianxia's heart's fulfillment art." "Hee, it's nothing," Xiaohua says half-heartedly. Looking left and right at the river water outside the water avoidance bead, he says with a smile, "I only had a slight feeling, that's all. Everything is because of senior brother Xianxia. If not for his heart's fulfillment art, how could we have entered?" Senior brother Xianxia's contribution is naturally great, but, if not for your reminder, we wouldn't have been able to concentrate on finding the door in advance. Xian stares at Xiaohua and says again. At this moment, Xianxia also opens his eyes and says with a forced smile. Indeed, when junior brother Deepu reminded me, I already activated my mental force and prepared myself. Junior brother's reminder is the finishing touch. Xiaohua looks Xian up and down, he says with a smile. I've always felt that I'm a burden. Being able to lend senior brother a hand today, my heart naturally feels at ease. There's no need to mention anything about claiming credit. Little monk, just now when the door appeared, you seemed to want to say something. Could it be that you were able to foresee the appearance of the door? Could it be that you know this ancient formation? Gu Zhan seems to have thought of something and says. Xiaohua touches his nose and says with a bitter smile. What are you talking about, great master? This is an ancient Taoist formation. How could I know? Just now when this little monk came in, I was still puzzled. I had clearly rushed through the door, but why did it look like I had plunged headfirst into the river? Seeing that Xiaohua didn't admit it, Xian didn't ask any more. She only said, Little monk, if you know anything you can tell us. We are now one body. We must advance and retreat together. Don't hide anything. Yes, I understand. Xiaohua nodded his head like a chick pecking rice. For this little monk's own life, this little monk will also tell you everything he knows. Xian snorted coldly, then reached out her hand and took out a jade box. She turned to Xianxia and asked, Fellow Immortal Xianxia, are you done resting? We don't have much time, so we need to hurry. Xianxia slowly got up and nodded. Xianxia, don't worry. I am fine now. Xianxia, fly behind this old monk. Gu Zhan looks at the water curtain on the left. Outside the water curtain, there are some strange swimming fishes and some grayish-black seaweed. There are no bones to be seen. He doesn't know whether to be happy or sad, so he says in a deep voice, You rashly used the relic psychokinesis, shaking the relic's foundation. You should use more heart to nourish it. It's not good to use psychokinesis again. Yes, thank you, martial ancestor. Xianxia slightly nods. The Buddhist light around her body flickers. She should be following the instructions to cast the spell. New Tanue, where do we fly to next? Gu Zhen asks Xian again. Xian says with confidence. Great master, don't worry. This is the bottom of the Sage River, thousands of feet deep. We are surrounded by river water, so it's hard to determine our direction. Although we have the water avoidance pearl, we can't fly at will. Once we touch the formation's restriction, we can't go forward anymore. I have a secret talisman of the Taoist gate here. It's time to use it. Amitba, then I'll have to trouble New Tanue. Gu Zhen puts his palms together and stands to the side. As early as when Xian took out that jade box, Xiaohua already saw clearly that there was a talisman of the Taoist gate stuck on the outside of the jade box. Inside the jade flute must be the magic tool that Xian used to break the formation. Xian raises her eyes to look at Xiaohua, then spits out a mouthful of true qi on the jade box. That talisman stuck on the box immediately floats up, flashes in midair and turns into a pile of ashes. As soon as the talisman disappears, a ball of dark green brilliance comes out of the jade box. A wave of magic power familiar to Xiaohua is transmitted along with the brilliance. Oh, what magic tool is this? It seems the magic power's fluctuation is very strange. Xiaohua doesn't dare to spread his divine sense far, only sweeping it in front of him. He is somewhat stunned as he thinks. Xian then raises her hand and opens the lid of the jade box. A 2 fingers wide and 4 fingers long flat jade flies out of the jade box. Jade talisman? A kind of surprise flashes in Xiaohua's eyes. This kind of jade talisman is rarely seen in the Dawn Rain continent where the Taoist gate is flourishing. How can it appear in the Buddhist gate's nirvana world? What is the origin of this Xian? Is it possible that a disciple of a Confucian family can use the Taoist gate's jade talisman? Sure enough, Xian opens her mouth and spits out another ball of true qi. This true qi is different from before. When it lands in the air, it immediately takes the shape of a sword. Xian's left hand grabs the air as if she is holding the flying sword. Then, as if she is forming a seal, that flying sword rapidly moves in midair. Go! Xian lightly reprimands. The true qi condensed into a flying sword suddenly explodes. The true qi rushes into the seal that was drawn on the flying sword before. Xian pushes her hand again. That true qi hits the jade talisman in midair. Crack, crack, crack. A burst of chaotic sounds. That jade talisman explodes like a blossoming emerald flower. Thousands of green lights fly in all directions. Ka 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 ka. The green lights emitted the splendor of the water avoidance pearl. Once they touch the water curtain outside, the water curtain immediately changes. Some parts turn into nothingness, while other parts condense into ice. In particular, this splendor rapidly extends into the distance. A beautiful ice palace unexpectedly appears in front of Xiao Hua and the others. This. Not to mention Xiao Hua's surprise. Even Ci Hui and Gu Zhan, who have already discussed this beforehand, look at the ice palace that suddenly appears in disbelief. They are speechless. This is the ancient Taoist gate's ice-condensing talisman. Unexpectedly, Xian blinked her eyes mischievously and explained in a somewhat showy manner. Mo Yuntong mentioned that the channel of this magic formation is condensed by the water-based qi of heaven and earth. It does not prevent the river water from flowing in. Even the river water in the channel may be an illusion created by the magic formation. At this point, Xian glances at Gu Zhan and continues to say, just by using the imperial equipment in the water avoidance pearl, we can't distinguish the true formation channel. Moreover, if we are not careful, it is very easy to fall into the formation and not be able to escape. Mo Yuntong mentioned an idea. If the river water in this channel is frozen, presumably the illusory river water will disappear and the true channel will appear. However, this method has very high requirements for the cultivator who uses the ice sealing technique. Not only must they have enough dharma power, but they must also control the technique to the smallest detail and not touch the formation. Coincidentally, I have seen a Taoist gate's ice sealing talisman. This thing itself is a water-type talisman. It is of the same origin as the formation in this river. Therefore, I don't need to know any ice sealing technique. I only need to use this talisman. Even more coincidentally, Xiao Hua can't help but say, Benefactress also knows how to use the Taoist gate's talisman with Confucian cultivation's true qi. Say, how can things in this world be so coincidental? It really is. Xian smiled proudly and pointed to the depths of the ice palace. It's such a coincidence. Now, we only need to fly inside and not touch the walls of the passage, and we will be able to find the trace of the immortal artifact. Alas, Xian Tanue is indeed well prepared. Ci Hui sighs again. If it was someone else, even if they came in, they would have to touch the formation's restrictions sooner or later. Let's go. It seems to be very big inside. My true qi has already been suppressed. Your Buddhist senses can't go very far, right? We still have a long way to go. Xian flies up first. She has already put away the water avoidance pearl, but still holds the flexible sword in her hand. Seeing Xian fly up, Gu Zhen glanced at Ci Hui and followed behind without saying anything. Ci Hui smiled and said to Xiao Hua, Thank you, junior brother Tip, for covering the rear for us. It's no problem. This is the safest place. This little monk can't ask for more. Xiao Hua raises his hand and asks Ci Hui to fly first. The four people fly up, with Xiao Hua at the back. He tries to release his Buddhist senses. Sure enough, it is extremely suppressed and can't go more than 10 feet. Moreover, the formation channels in the four walls also block his Buddhist senses, so it can't go out at all. But fortunately, Xiao Hua feels that his soul sense is not suppressed too much. If it can go very far. These are bones. Not long after flying out, Xiao Hua is trying to use his soul sense. In front of him, Xian calls out with some hesitation. Xiao Hua looks up. On the ice channel several feet away, there is an area densely packed with hundreds and thousands of bones. These bones are already scattered. It is impossible to tell what kind of bones they are. Moreover, the size of the bones is also different. Some are half a foot long, some are several feet long. They are obviously not human bones. Alas, Amitba. Gu Zhan's slightly sorrowful voice rises. Thank you for the reminder. This old monk has already seen it. Although this old monk is already prepared, when faced with these bones, my heart is complicated. This formation must be the skeleton of my younger brother. This formation is so miraculous. With this old monk's current cultivation, This old monk can't deal with it. How can he escape at that time? Forget it. Since this old monk can face his skeleton, this old monk can recite the rebirth mantra several times. This old monk has already fulfilled his lifelong wish. After saying that, Gu Zhen sits cross-legged in front of the ice wall formed by the bones. He puts his palms together and devoutly recites the rebirth mantra. Strands of elemental energy are sent into the ice wall along with Gu Zhen's chanting. Unfortunately, the ice wall has no reaction at all. It is like a clay ox entering the sea. Chapter 34-23. When a drop of crystal-clear tear flowed out of Gu Zhen's left eye, it slowly slid across his slightly rough face and condensed on his chin. Xiao Hua's suspicion in his heart completely disappeared. Xiao Hua really didn't dare to believe that a Buddhist disciple who practiced Dharma protector, Han Zhu, was a typical example. Gu Zhen revealed his true feelings. His so-called story of his brother's disappearance should be true, then his purpose of entering the formation should be normal. Gu Zhen's chanting was gentle and sad, far from the chanting of an ordinary monk. Xian and Ci Hui also felt sad in their hearts, standing there silently. Xian didn't urge Gu Zhen to hurry up, but from time to time, she looked at the ice wall covered with white bones. She knew that the ice wall must be the water curtain of the formation before it was frozen. These white bones didn't rush into the Saint River but stayed in the water curtain, so they must be imprisoned. She was afraid that Gu Zhen's psyche power would touch these white bones and trigger the restriction. Fortunately, after half an hour, Gu Zhen's voice gradually stopped, and the ice near the white bones didn't change at all. Only then did Xian let out a long breath. At the same time, Gu Zhen also let out a sigh of relief. After Gu Zhen finished chanting the rebirth mantra, he stood up and chanted Amit Ba 9 times in a row, as if he had put down a heavy burden. His eyes, which were full of killing intent before, also had a trace of vitality. Seeing this, Xian said with a smile, "Congratulations, Master Gu Zhen, for untangling the knot in your heart." "Thank you, Xian Tanyue, for fulfilling my wish." Gu Zhen hurriedly tidied his monk robe, put his palms together and bowed solemnly. "If I didn't meet you, I don't know when I could be free." "This is Buddha's mercy," Xian said with a smile. "Master, you have contributed a lot to Buddhism. Buddha saw that you were burdened by the knot in your heart, so he pointed out the supreme path for you, but it has nothing to do with me. Heavenly flowers with others, lingering fragrance in my hand." Ci Hui also said with a smile, "Buddha used Tanyue to help Gu Zhen become Grandmaster Gu Zhen. Tanyue also has boundless merit." "Haha, I don't dare," Xian replied. "If Master Gu Zhen has nothing else to do, can we move on?" Let's go. Gu Zhen said with a relaxed smile. "I'm fine. In the future, I will listen to Tanyue's instructions." Good. Xian controlled the auspicious cloud beneath her feet and continued to lead the way. Gu Zhen glanced at Bai Gu again before following closely behind. The ice cave's passageway was similar to ordinary mountain paths, and was even more difficult to distinguish than mountain paths. After Xiao Hua and the others flew forward for half an incense stick's worth of time, many forks appeared. These forks were no different in Xiao Hua's eyes, and even their shapes were exactly the same. Even Xian often stopped and took out her ink cloud eyes to carefully examine them. Finally, Xian's ink cloud pupil was no longer useful when she saw 3 different paths in front of her. She of Gu Zhen's of a man, Tanyue's of a man, Tanyue, and her Tanyue, and then Tanning Tanyue. Tanyue S, Sans S Tanyue's, Yuntong, Tanyong's, San S, Tanyue, Tain, S, Tanyue's, Tanyue, was, Tanyue S, and S, Tanis's, I's SS, Tong. I've made preparations in advance, but I want to see if there are any clues. It's best if we don't use the prepared means. Okay, let's see together. Tanyue understood Xian's thoughts, and then she flew toward one of the paths. Tanyue! Xian hurriedly called, "Don't go too deep and don't touch the ice wall." "I understand." Tanyue entered the path with a smile. Xiao Hua and Gu Zhen also responded, each entering a fork in the road. Xiao Hua didn't know what Tanyue and Tanyue were like, but he himself was very careful. After flying for hundreds of feet, another 4 paths appeared in front of him. Xiao Hua immediately stopped flying. This was not the void, and he didn't dare to wander around. Looking at the 4 paths that looked similar, Xiaohua smiled bitterly. The person who set up the formation is really insidious. Why did he make so many paths? Damn it, if I set up a formation in the future, I'll make it more complicated than this one. After venting his anger, Xiaohua turned around and was about to fly back, but when he turned around, a huge shadow pressed down from above his head. Who? Xiaohua was surprised, and without hesitation, he waved his hand and held the wishful staff in his hand. However, when he took a closer look, he laughed again. He saw that outside the ice wall above his head was the water of the Sage River, and the huge monster was a huge river fish that he had never seen before. The river fish swayed its huge tail slightly, and it didn't notice Xiaohua in the formation below. Ha ha! Xiaohua looked at the river fish's leisurely appearance, smiled slightly, put away the wishful staff, and continued to fly back. However, after flying for a while, he began to mutter in his heart, "This formation is really strange. Not to mention that it's completely arranged at the bottom of the Sage River. The passage in this formation is so close to the river water, and there's something strange about it. If I were to encounter danger and desperately break through this ice wall, wouldn't I be able to escape the formation? However, is this formation so easy to break through?" Xiaohua thought as he flew, and soon saw Xianxia's figure. Suddenly, Xiaohua's heart lit up, and he realized, "Grandma, I was almost fooled again. How can I directly see the formation outside? Outside this ice wall must be an illusion of the formation, which is to lure people into the river water. Once they touch the formation, they will definitely die." Alas, thanks to Xianxia's frozen talisman. Right, speaking of the frozen talisman, this jade talisman is really powerful, even stronger than my fire talisman. I just don't know if the Xian family has a refining method? Little monk. When Xiaohua's heart was filled with greed, Xian raised her voice. "Have you found a way out?" "No." Xiaohua smiled and shook his head. "This little monk's luck has always been bad. I only encountered 4 forks and turned back, not daring to go forward." "Haha, it's already good." Xian laughed. "If you were the only one who encountered 4 forks, then this path is the right one." Hearing this, Xiaohua shook his head. There's no need to plan for the best. Senior brother Ci Hui and Grandmaster Gu Zhen's passage must also have 4 forks. Xian raised her eyebrows, not forgetting to probe. Could it be that this little monk knows how to set up a formation? Tise. Xiaohua pursed his lips. Even a child would understand this kind of little trick. How could the person who set up the formation not know? Do they still need this little monk to know how to set up a formation? Sure enough, not long after, Ci Hui and Grandmaster Gu Zhen also returned, explaining one by one. The 2 of them were a bit stronger than Xiaohua, so they each chose 2 passages and went deeper. However, later on they both returned. It was really as Xiaohua said, they also encountered 4 forks. After hearing this, Xian smiled bitterly, saying, "Actually, if we patiently explore these forks, we may be able to find a way out. Unfortunately, we have only just entered the formation. The difficult part is still inside. We can't waste time here." As she spoke, she reached out and took out a purple object that was only 3 inches long. That object was similar to sandalwood, emitting a faint trace of a meaty aroma. There was also a burnt black color on it, as if it had just been extinguished. 6 directions divine concealment incense? Xiaohua's eyes lit up. The name of this ancient object very easily appeared in his mind. At the same time, some other memories appeared. Ah! Immediately after, Xiaohua raised his eyebrows, secretly surprised. Then he suddenly understood. These memories were all given to him by the ghost cultivator Huang Yi. But before the spiritual energy was not clear, the spiritual cavities were not completely opened. Now these memories, along with the understanding of the green-robed Xiaohua and the other primordial spirits, were being absorbed by Xiaohua at an accelerated rate. What is this? Ci Hui naturally did not know, and asked in a low voice, somewhat surprised. "It seems to be my Buddhist sect's sandalwood? This object is called divine concealment incense." Xian raised her hand and said with a smile, "Although it's called incense, in reality, it has nothing to do with your Buddhist sect. It's a secret technique of the Tao sect. I don't know what this object is made of, but after it's ignited, the incense can protect the primordial spirit. After the primordial spirit escapes, As long as the incense itself is not extinguished, no restriction can prevent the primordial spirit from escaping. Escape technique. Hearing this, Xiaohua immediately understood that this was the Dao sect's escape technique. As long as the divine concealment incense was not extinguished, its incense could provide a passage for the escaping primordial spirit. No matter where, the primordial spirit could return. Hearing this, Guzhen frowned and said, "Could it be that Xianxia is also proficient in the Dao sect's escape technique?" Xian said with a smile, "I can't be considered proficient, I only know a little." Following Xian's smile, her gaze swept over Xiaohua with interest. Damn it! Instantly, Xiaohua wanted to stomp his feet. Is there a need? If you can understand the Dao sect's magic, why can't this young master understand it? Although this young master is a Buddhist sect disciple, isn't it better to learn from others? You can't just let the state officials set fires and not let the common people light lamps, right? That's right. Previously, Xiaohua did not care about looking at her a few more times and insinuating a few more times. He also did not know where he had exposed himself, but now that he heard Xian's words, he naturally knew that this Confucian woman had already seen through the signs of his Dao sect cultivation. Of course, it could also be said that this woman was somewhat suspicious. That's not possible. Xiaohua did not look at Xian. He lowered his head and thought to himself, even if she has Dao sect cultivation, this Xiao did not use any Dao sect divine ability. Oh, I understand. The moment this Xiao entered the formation, this Xiao seemed to have activated his true essence. Perhaps at that time, she would have been able to sense the fluctuations of true essence. Alas, this little girl is still worried about this Xiao. At this moment, Hui frowned and said, "In that case, Tanyue is preparing to use the escape technique of his primordial spirit to explore the path?" To be precise, he is using a trace of his primordial spirit. Xian said with a smile. The Dao sect has a secret technique that can release a trace of his primordial spirit for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. If the primordial spirit is of the same mind, it can travel thousands of miles in an instant. The time it takes for an incense stick to burn is enough for this one to explore these three paths. Chapter 34-24. Xian Tanyue, be careful. Hui didn't quite understand and only instructed. Xian opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of true qi onto the incense. The tip of the incense flashed brilliantly and ignited. A faint wisp of smoke shot straight into the air. Grandmaster Guzhen, please protect this little girl. Xian's cherry lips parted slightly. She immediately sat down in the air and formed a spell that Xiaohua was unfamiliar with. Her eyes were tightly shut. Hearing this, Guzhen waved his hand and placed the huge demon-subduing pestle in front of his chest. His eyes widened and he vigilantly patrolled the surroundings. Xiaohua didn't open his transcendence vision so he couldn't see anything. He only saw that the incense suddenly split into three and rushed straight into the three forks. Then, the entire passage was filled with a faint smell of meat. Oh! Xian actually split into three primordial spirits? Xiaohua's eyes brightened. This guy is from a scholarly family. How does he know so many Taoist secret techniques? Even this young master doesn't know this secret technique. Just as Xiaohua was filled with envy, jealousy, and hatred, a beastly roar came from the left side of the tunnel. Soon after, the entire frozen tunnel shook. Looking at Xian, who was sitting cross-legged, a strand of golden true energy rushed out from the top of her head. In an instant, it completely protected her. The part of her face that was not covered by the true energy turned dark red. Not good. Guzhen hurriedly said, "I'm afraid Xian Tanyue's primordial spirit is in danger." Just as he was speaking, the fragrance of the incense grew stronger. A gust of wind blew out from the other two passages and rushed in front of Xian, extinguishing the incense in an instant. "Let's go." At the same time the incense was extinguished, Xian opened her eyes. Her eyes were filled with fear. Without waiting for her to stand up, auspicious clouds immediately appeared below her and carried her towards the passage that Xiaohua just explored. There's an essence-devouring demonic beast in that passage. Hearing the name of an essence-devouring demonic beast, Guzhen's expression changed. He waved the demon-subduing pestle in his hand and flew with Xian. Xiaohua accompanied Ci Hui and followed behind. At this time, Xian Xinrua was also familiar with the path in front. Encountering a fork, she didn't hesitate. The four of them quickly flew for another incense stick's worth of time. Senior brother Ci Hui, what is this essence-devouring demonic beast? Xiaohua asked in a low voice when he saw that Xian had already slowed down. Alas, this essence-devouring demonic beast is an extinct demonic beast from ancient times. It feeds on the essence qi of both humans and demonic beasts. Neither Buddhism nor Confucianism have any effective means to resist this demonic beast. Only demonic beasts that are more powerful can resist it. Fortunately, there were very few of these demonic beasts in the world. Later on, for some unknown reason, they disappeared without a trace. This little monk has also heard about it from Confucian cultivators. Who would have thought that we would meet here? Ci Hui replied in a low voice. Xiaohua was deep in thought. Looking at Xian's back view in front, he said, looks like that trace of Xian's primordial spirit is like throwing a meat bun at a dog. It's gone with no return. You're the meat bun. Just as Xiaohua's voice fell, Xian immediately stopped, turned her head and scolded. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He opened his mouth to explain, but when he saw Xian's flushed face, he knew that her primordial spirit was damaged. He didn't dare to say anything and hastily shut his mouth. Humph. Seeing that Xiaohua didn't say anything, Xian, who was in a bad mood, coldly snorted. She looked around and said, Great Master Guzhen, this one's primordial spirit is damaged. I need to take medicine to heal. I'll have to trouble Great Master Shen to protect me. Alas, Xian Tanyue has worked hard. This old monk is duty-bound. Guzhen flew past Xiaohua and Ci Hui with the demon-subduing pestle in his hand. He landed at the back, facing the entrance of the passage. This little monk will go to the front. Xiaohua was very tactful. Without waiting for Ci Hui to speak, he flew past Xian and arrived about 10 zhong in front of her. Xian took out a thumb-sized jade bottle and crushed the top of the bottle. She opened her mouth and poured a strand of golden medicinal liquid into it. Immediately, her body's true qi surged and protected her. Several strands of true qi lingered around her 7 apertures and the top of her head like small snakes. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Xian opened her mouth and all the golden true qi entered her mouth. She then stood up and said, All right, Great Master Guzhen, let's continue. Xian Tanyue. Ci Hui, who had been standing not far from Xian, hurriedly asked, Your primordial spirit is damaged. Why don't you rest for a while? Alas, many thanks for fellow immortals' concern. Xian sighed slightly. This one's primordial spirit was swallowed by the spirit-devouring demonic beast. If I want to recover, I'll need 3 years of hard work. Now that I've taken the soul-condensing golden liquid, my primordial spirit is temporarily protected. There won't be any big problems. There's no difference between resting more and resting less. All right. Ci Hui nodded helplessly. However, fellow immortal can't lead the way from now on. That's right. This old monk will lead the way from now on. Guzhen flew over, his voice very loud. Xian nodded. Then I'll have to trouble Great Master. No matter, no matter. Guzhen smiled. I can't accept a reward without any effort. If this old monk doesn't put in effort, wouldn't I be ashamed to face Tanyue? How can this old monk reach out and take the ancient Buddha blessing? Hee hee. Xian smiled faintly. This one's preparations can be considered adequate. However, I didn't expect that before we even went deeper, I would feel a little defeated. This primordial spell formation is really powerful. If it weren't for Great Master, a 5th grade primordial qi senior, this one definitely wouldn't dare to go any deeper. Let's go. Guzhen waved the demon-subduing pestle in his hand and flew up first. Xian naturally followed behind, and Xiaohua brought up the rear again. Under Xian's guidance, the 4 of them flew for a while more. They saw that the frozen ice walls were gradually decreasing, and the forks in the path were also decreasing in number. After flying through a long passage where ice and water intersected, a water wall appeared in front of them. This water wall was azure in color and didn't show any signs of being frozen. It seemed like they had reached the end of the spell formation. Lady Tanyue. Gu Zhan stopped in front of the water wall and used his Buddhist awareness to scan the water wall that was more than 100 feet in size. He turned back and said, "How should we go next?" "Tanyue, please cast your spell." Xian also stopped and didn't rush to answer. Instead, she flew close to the water wall and looked up and down. She even stretched out her hand and extended her soft sword, gently piercing it into the water wall. The water wall really looked like river water, and the soft sword sank into it. However, when Xian pulled out the soft sword, there was no river water on it. Strangely, Xian didn't rush to put the soft sword away after pulling it out. Instead, she put it in front of her nose and sniffed it gently. Xiao Hua and Ci Hui also flew over at this time. Ci Hui stood beside Gu Zhan while Xiao Hua flew to the water wall and asked, "Benefactor Xian, is this water wall no longer the spell formation's restriction?" There are records of this water passage in the ink cloud pupil. Although the water here isn't the river water of the Sage River, there are no restrictions inside. The spell formation's restriction is the same as the maze we're in, on the outer layer. Xian sniffed the aura on the soft sword and carefully put it away. As if she was sure, she nodded and said, "However, this river water is mixed with a highly toxic poison. No matter if it's Confucian, Buddhist, Taoist, or demon, as long as the skin touches it, it will immediately split open. No protective spells will work." "Highly toxic?" Then, Xiao Hua frowned. "How should we go over?" "Hee. This is where we should borrow the power of the great master." Xian turned to Gu Zhan and said with a smile, "My original plan was to use Master Fontain's magic tool to freeze the poisonous water in this water passage or expel it to prevent our skin from touching it. Now, with the great master's Buddhist alms bowl, we can also collect it. Naturally, this water passage can be emptied." "It's that simple?" Xiao Hua asked in disbelief. He didn't think that the ancient spell formation only relied on poisonous water to block people. It's that simple." Xian nodded. "This water passage relies on highly toxic poison. There's no antidote for the ancient poison now. If we touch it, we'll definitely die without a burial place. Of course, this passage is extremely long. Ordinary Confucian cultivators' magic tools have limited capacity, so it's difficult to collect all the poisonous water in the passage. Only Taoist magic tools and Buddhist magic tools can do it. Also, if we can't collect or freeze all the poisonous water in the passage in one go, the uncollected poisonous water in front of us will immediately trigger the restriction of the spell formation. New poisonous water will pour in again, and we'll have no choice but to return here." "I see. This old monk understands." Gu Zhan nodded slightly, put away the demon-subduing pestle in his hand, and took out the alms bowl. He said with a smile, "Of course, this old monk's alms bowl only collected less than half of the water in the Four Extremes mountain. Since Xian Tanyue thinks it's possible, this old monk's Buddhist magic tool will definitely work." "That," Xiao Hua said worriedly. "There's already a lot of water in the great master's alms bowl. Can't you collect less water now?" Ha, little monk. This old monk has already sprinkled the water in the alms bowl on the dry land on the way here. Now, this alms bowl is empty." Gu Zhan laughed and tossed the alms bowl in his hand. The Buddhist light around him shone brightly, and his previously shrunken body expanded again until he was about 10 feet tall. Then he formed a seal with both hands, and the Buddhist seal hit the alms bowl. The alms bowl spun and gradually expanded, flying in front of Gu Zhan. Gu Zhan flew in front of the water wall. The alms bowl spat out Buddhist light and covered the water wall. Under the Buddhist light, the water in the water wall swayed and rippled. Gu Zhan didn't look back and laughed. "Are you all ready?" "We're ready." "Great Master, please cast the spell in front of us. Once the poisonous water in the passage is collected, there will be a gap immediately. Great Master, please go ahead." Xian took a deep breath, and his previously flushed face had somewhat calmed down now. "Amitba." Gu Zhan chanted the name of Buddha and formed a seal with both hands. The Buddhist light above the alms bowl buzzed and rushed into the water wall like a whirlpool on the surface of the river. Everyone's eyes fell on it expectantly. Woo-woo. As far as everyone's eyes could see, ripples appeared on the water wall inside the Buddhist light. The ripples spread wider and deeper, forming a whirlpool. However, it was an inverted whirlpool, protruding above the water wall. Under the Buddhist light, it was gradually sucked into the alms bowl. Chapter 34-25. Come back. Gu Zhen roared and pushed the Buddhist light that had landed on the wall of water. The entire wall of water shook, and the water ripple that had protruded a few inches and hadn't fallen into the alms bowl was grabbed by a big hand and stuffed into the bowl. As soon as the water wave fell, the water tunnel immediately emptied a few inches of space. Xiao Hua's eyes swept across the tunnel that was dozens of feet wide. The walls were like ice walls, but there was no sign of frost. Outside the mirror-like water wall, it was pitch black. There was no watergrass or river fish. The Buddhist weapon of the Buddhist sect was really powerful. Xiao Hua looked around for a moment and found that the poisonous water in the tunnel had been sucked away by about a foot. Moreover, it seemed that Gu Zhen was doing it with ease. The speed of the poisonous water being absorbed into the alms bowl was getting faster and faster. Good. Xianxia smiled and clapped her hands. Although the Buddhist sect's supernatural power is not as sharp as the Tao sect's magic, it has always been able to take drastic measures. Master Gu Zhen's absorption of the poisonous water is better than Master Feng Tian's removal of the poisonous water. Both have their advantages and disadvantages. Xiao Hua said faintly. Master Gu Zhen's absorption of the poisonous water into the Buddhist treasure will take some time. I guess it won't be as fast as Master Feng Tian's removal of the poisonous water. In fact, instead of using the alms bowl to absorb the poisonous water, it's better for us to use the Buddhist weapon to escape through the water. Humph, what do you know? Although it's very difficult to absorb the poisonous water at the beginning and the speed is slow, after the initial poisonous water is absorbed, the other poisonous water will flow and fill in one by one. With the push and pull, the speed will get faster and faster. Oh, and I forgot to say that the water in the tunnel is not the river water of the Saint River. Not only is it highly poisonous, but it is also mixed with the innate heavy water. As long as someone or something enters it, it will trigger the magic formation. Thousands of heavy water will press down on the person, making it impossible to move forward or backward. Xianxia glanced at Xiao Hua unhappily. You thought of it, but I thought about it long ago. If we can walk through it, why would I bother to find Master Feng Tian? All right. Xiao Hua knew that there were many ways to break the restrictive spell, but he was only considering it from his own point of view. He didn't refute and nodded slightly. It was just as Xianxia had said. The first step was the most difficult step, but the next 3 meters were much easier. Master Gu Zhen flew faster and faster. Xiao Hua and the others hurriedly urged their clouds to follow behind. It was just as Xiao Hua had seen at the beginning. After entering the tunnel, there was no trace of the water wall at all. It was as smooth as a mirror. Everyone was flying in the air. On the water wall, there were several clear shadows. Xiao Hua's Buddhist consciousness swept over and was immediately absorbed by the smooth mirror surface. Xiao Hua quickly withdrew his Buddhist consciousness. Looking at Xianxia again, she also had an unnatural expression on her face. Most likely, she had also turned into a meat bun after releasing her divine sense. Looking at Master Gu Zhen's Buddha body and his increasing speed, Xiao Hua was shocked. He seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly asked, Senior brother Xiai Hui, isn't Master Gu Zhen's speed too fast? Why does this little monk have the illusion that the poisonous water is absorbing Master Gu Zhen instead of Master Gu Zhen withdrawing the poisonous water? Hiss. Hearing Xiao Hua's words, Xiai Hui was also stunned. She took a breath and said in a low voice, Junior brother's words also make this poor monk puzzled. Why is Grandmaster's speed increasing again and again? What do you know? Xianxia sneered. The water in this tunnel needs to be filled at all times. If the Grandmaster keeps the water, then the Grandmaster will have to pour even more water in. This water needs to be poured in from the front. The more water the Grandmaster keeps, the more water will pour in, and the more force the Grandmaster will use to push the Grandmaster in. As you can see, it's not that Master Gu Zhen is consuming too much karma, but that the formation is pushing the alms bowl with too much force. Master Gu Zhen has no choice but to speed up. The problem is, what if Master Gu Zhen's speed can't compare to the speed of the formation filling the water? Xiao Hua hit the nail on the head. This. Xianxia bit her lips and hesitated. After a moment she said, In my opinion, As long as Master Gu Zhan's Buddhist treasure alms bowl can hold enough poisonous water, he will be fine. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua didn't let her go. He asked again, but what if Master Gu Zhan's alms bowl can't hold so much poisonous water? Hearing this, Xianxia's expression changed slightly. She stared at Xiao Hua for a moment and suddenly became furious. She shouted hysterically, "How do I know what to do? I'm just a little girl. I want to come to this formation to find treasures. I racked my brains to find Mo Yuntong. According to Mo Yuntong's fragments, I repeatedly thought about it and prepared the things I needed according to my own thoughts. I didn't dare to find others, nor did I dare to tell the people around me. I painstakingly endured for more than 10 years before I found you. You have such an opportunity. Not only did you not thank me, but you also pointed here. If you have the ability, go find Mo Yuntong. If you have the ability, go find an ancient formation. You want to ask what will happen if the poisonous water comes in again? Well, then I'll tell you. I've thought about this poisonous water for a long time. Unless you don't touch it, once you touch it, even if you are a Buddhist sect's Arhat or a Confucian sect's Grandmaster, your protective true qi and other things won't work. You just need to close your eyes. Later, when you turn into a white bone, it will also float at the entrance of the formation as a warning to others. Of course, if you can speak at that time, don't let anyone in. Xianxia's voice wasn't soft. Her tone was very fast, as if she was anxious and angry. Looking at her face, the redness had gradually faded. Instead, it was a little pale and there were some tears in her eyes. She looked extremely wronged. Xiao Hua was a little dumbfounded. He didn't expect Xian to have such a reaction. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but didn't know how to comfort her, so he simply closed his mouth. However, he secretly muttered in his heart, "This little girl. What does she mean? Could it be that she came to find the immortal artifact for other purposes? Why didn't she even dare to tell her family members and instead believe outsiders?" However, it really wasn't easy for her to find so much information. Ci Hui gave Xiao Hua a rare glare, then turned to Xian and said warmly, "Xian, don't be angry. Junior brother Tip only asked a few more questions for our safety. In such a dangerous place, no matter how careful we are, we can't be too careful." Xian also realized her gaffe. She slightly clenched her teeth and did her best to hold back the tears that were about to flow out. However, she wasn't willing to raise her arm and wipe it with her palace gown. After a while she raised her head and said, "Many thanks for fellow immortals' comfort. This one understands that the little monk's words are reasonable. However, this one has been preparing for so many years, I hope fellow immortal can trust me." At this moment, a low rumbling sound came from the water tunnel ahead of them. It seemed to be shaking slightly. Moreover, the Buddhist light around Gu Zhan's body began to flicker. Before Xiao Hua and the others could look at Gu Zhan, the rumbling sound grew louder and louder. A moment later, a deafening sound came from the tunnel. "Not good." Gu Zhan roared, "There's too much water coming from the river ahead. This old monk's alms bowl can't hold it in." As he spoke, a stream of water flowed out from under Gu Zhan's body. "Hurry!" Xian's expression changed when she saw the water seeping out. She shrieked, "Master Gu Zhan, retreat quickly!" "Wait a moment." Gu Zhan clenched his teeth and roared. Under the flickering Buddhist light, his Dharma body grew several meters taller. "This old monk will..." It seemed that Gu Zhan was still unwilling to give up and wanted to struggle a few more times. However, when Xian's scorpion-like stream of river water passed by Gu Zhan's body, ripples immediately appeared on the previously tranquil water wall. These ripples rapidly rippled around the entire water wall, and when they circled around Xiao Hua and the others, forming a water ring, they actually produced a crisp, pa-pa-pa sound, as if an ice river had suddenly broken, or as if a mountain rock had been broken. Immediately after, these sounds along with the water ring, rapidly rushed behind Xiao Hua and the others, wave after wave. The crisp sound was like the sound of a life-threatening drum. It spread farther and farther, echoing in the water tunnel and knocking on the hearts of Xiao Hua and the others. "This is bad." Xiao Hua's face immediately turned pale. He thought of the collapse of the space tunnel in the vein of space. At this time, Xian and Ci Hui had already activated their auspicious clouds. They looked hesitantly at Gu Zhan, then at the tunnel in the distance, not knowing what to do. Boom! In front of Gu Zhen, the water wall shook violently. The water wall around half a foot collapsed and a stream of water rushed toward Gu Zhen. Gu Zhen was shocked. He remembered Xianxian's words and didn't dare to let the Buddhist light touch the water. He hurriedly retreated. However, the water was too sudden. Although Gu Zhen had already retreated, a few drops of water still splashed on the Buddhist light. Zzzt. Like ice water poured on boiling oil, the sound caused green smoke to rise. Gu Zhen's Buddhist light quickly faded. Go! Xian clenched her teeth and hurriedly shouted, ready to fly out of the tunnel first. I'm afraid it's already too late. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and calmly looked at the tunnel that had become a water wall in the distance. What? How is that possible? Xian turned pale with fright. She looked up again and saw that the water walls of the tunnel were beginning to ripple. In the distance, the sound of a cow mooing could be heard. It was obvious that a large amount of river water had begun to pour in from the distance, or the tunnel had begun to collapse. That's impossible. Xian's flushed face was now abnormally pale. She muttered in a tone of disbelief, Emo Yun Tong, there's no record of it. Xian, let this little monk ask you. At this time, Xiao Hua hurriedly shouted, if this tunnel collapses, can you find a way out? I can't. Xian shook her head absent-mindedly. There's one thing I didn't say before. The poisonous water in this tunnel is no different from the river water. We can't distinguish the direction by using imperial equipment and other things. We can only suck the poisonous water out or freeze it. Good. Xiao Hua shouted and shouted at Gu Zhen, who had already fled back in embarrassment. Great master, please hold on for a moment. This little monk will join hands with you to suck the poisonous water in front of us. Now we can only go forward. Retreat will only lead to death. You? Xian was stunned. Her eyes were wide open. She looked up and down at Xiao Hua, feeling a burst of disbelief. Chapter 34-26. Rise. Xiao Hua didn't have time to say anything. With a wave of his hand, the water bottle in the Buddha Sarira's hand appeared in his hand. Of course, when he took it out, Xiao Hua didn't forget to leave the willow branch in the Linglong Pagoda. Seeing Xiao Hua take out the water bottle, Gu Zhen's eyes lit up. He didn't dare to be negligent. He stimulated his karma, and the Buddha's light on the alms bowl appeared again. He tried his best to collect the poisonous water that had begun to overflow. Collect. Xiao Hua held the water bottle with one hand and formed a seal with the other hand. A pure Buddha's light came out of the water bottle and turned into a lotus seed pod that covered Gu Zhen's back. The poisonous water that gushed out of the water wall and seeped through the water wall was all sucked into the water bottle. When the threat of the poisonous water dripping into Gu Zhen's Buddha's light was removed, the Buddha's light from the water bottle rushed in front of Gu Zhen again. The huge suction force was even stronger than Gu Zhen's alms bowl. Nearly 60% of the water waves rushed into it. Boom! A loud sound that sounded like raging waves crashing against the shore came from behind everyone. The collapsed water wall and the poisonous water that surged in were like the waves of a rising tide, surging up violently from behind. It was almost visible to the naked eye. Great Master Gu Zhen, you take the lead, I'll take the back. Let's work together. Xiao Hua's hand formed a Buddha's seal, and he called out in high spirits. Gu Zhen seemed to be infected and he roared, as you wish. Let's go. For a moment, the entire water tunnel was filled with Buddha's light. The previous vast and surging water was obediently subdued by the two Buddha's light. Like a python, it rushed into the two Buddha's treasures. The strange thing was, after the poisonous water was collected, the water wall on the left immediately turned into a flat mirror without the slightest ripple or crack. However, Xiao Hua and the other three flew over. In just a few breaths, the collapsed water ripples behind them reached them. These flat mirror surfaces immediately broke, and the water waves surged again. The poisonous water still gushed out. Therefore, a very dangerous scene appeared in the tunnel. Within the entire tunnel, there were several zhang of space that was calm. Moreover, this several zhang of calm was rapidly moving forward along with the different heights of the tunnel. In front of this section of calm was a seemingly boundless river, And behind the section of calm were monstrous waves that chased after one's buttocks. This situation was extremely similar to the collapse of the tunnel that Xiaohua encountered in the void. Even though the situation was very dangerous, the sound of the wind stirred up by the poisonous water chasing after them was already whistling in their ears. However, Gu Zhan, who was in front, had Xiaohua's help, so the situation was already very good. Especially since Xiaohua's water bottle obviously had a stronger suction force than the alms bowl, so it could contain more poisonous water. Gu Zhan only needed to grasp the right direction and guide the Buddha's light from the water bottle. For the time being, the lives of Xian and the others would not be in danger. However, after Xiaohua and Gu Zhan flew for the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the surging poisonous water seemed to be endless. Even someone as strong as Xiaohua's arm felt sore and numb. The water bottle was getting heavier and heavier. The amount of telekinesis required to activate the water bottle was also increasing. At this moment, Xiaohua finally understood Gu Zhan's previous predicament. The pressure of the poisonous water in front of them was increasing wave after wave, and his telekinesis could only be activated layer by layer. Not only was the water bottle on the verge of breaking out of his control, the suction force of the water bottle was also about to break out of his control. Damn it, the person who set up this formation is really sinister. Xiaohua unconsciously cursed in his heart. This poisonous water can only be frozen and collected. Collecting is just like right now. However much this Xiao collects, the formation will replenish that amount. Just like what Xian said, this force is superimposed. In the end, it will be unimaginably powerful. If not for this Xiao's astonishing divine power, others would have already been crushed to death by the poisonous water. But what about after being frozen? Escaping through the layer of ice, the person who set up the formation must have some other backup plan. What is this backup plan? When I set up the formation? As Xiaohua pondered, he actually began to think about how to set up the formation. It must be said that this was the biggest difference between a formation master and an ordinary cultivator. At this moment, Gu Zhan's slightly tired voice came. Tipu, this old monk's telekinesis can still support this formation, but my arms are already exhausted. I can't control the alms bowl. What do you think we should do? All right. Hearing this, Xiaohua stretched out his hand and flew forward. He shouted, "This junior will take this alms bowl. Grandmaster, you can use your telekinesis as much as you want." As soon as the alms bowl entered his hand, another heavy force pressed down on Xiaohua's arm. Xiaohua's body suddenly fell straight down for more than a few feet. Only then did he stop and continue to fly forward. After flying for another half a cup of tea's time, Xiaohua really couldn't bear it anymore. He roared, "Fellow Taoist Xian, how long is this water tunnel?" Although this little monk's Buddhist treasure can still hold the poisonous water, the impact of this formation is really too great. It's already beyond the range of what ordinary cultivators can bear. This. Xian's heart had actually been clenched all this time. Now that she heard Xiaohua's words, her heart sank even deeper. She bit her lips and said, "As for how long it is exactly, I don't know. Perhaps we're about to reach the end?" AI. Xiaohua sighed. Now that he had already boarded the pirate ship, how could he still hold anything back? Let's talk about it later if we can save our lives. Saying this, Xiaohua's entire body flashed with Buddhist light. He was about to use the heavenly law embodiment technique. Boom! A long whimpering sound rang out. It was like the sound of the bellows in an ordinary household being forcefully pulled out. Xiaohua felt that the enormous force in front of him suddenly disappear, and the strength he had gathered suddenly disappeared. Normally, Xiaohua would naturally be able to control it. However, right now, he was using the heavenly law embodiment technique and had to use Buddhist light to conceal it. It was difficult for him to do three things at once. As a result, the water bottle and alms bowl in his hand simultaneously flew out of his hand. Even his body lost balance in midair. Fortunately, it was only a few breaths of time. Xiaohua's body naturally swept forward. He used the ethereal steps and stabilized his body. With a raise of his hand, the water bottle and alms bowl both fell between his two hands. Xiaohua didn't pay attention to it. However, when Xian, who had just rushed out of the tunnel, saw Xiaohua's footwork, her complexion greatly changed. Her gaze revealed a kind of severe expression. However, This severe expression and peculiar expression only flashed for a moment. It wasn't seen by the bystanders. As for Xianxia at this moment, he was calm and unruffled. He had the appearance of a naive little monk. He respectfully handed the alms bowl to Gu Zhen, who had followed behind him. However, just as he sent out his hand, his gaze swept behind Gu Zhen. He couldn't help but be stunned. He saw that behind Gu Zhen was a huge space. This space was filled with a kind of soft fluorescent light. Under the illumination of this fluorescent light, a sparkling and translucent crystal palace towered in the middle of this space. This crystal palace was very strange. It wasn't an ordinary palace. Instead, it had the appearance of a triangular tower. Moreover, this triangular tower was inverted. The huge palace that caused people's hearts to tremble stood erect at the top of this space. From the top of the palace, it shrunk layer by layer. In the end, it actually shrunk into a prism-like palace base that was inserted into the waves below everyone's feet. The waves rippled and the fluorescent light flickered. The entire palace seemed to sway in the air, as if it would collapse at any time. Gu Zhen's back was facing this palace. At first, he didn't care about it. However, Xiaohua's outstretched hand stopped in mid-air. Xiaohua's gaze passed over him and looked behind him. How could Gu Zhen not know the situation? He hurriedly released his Buddhist sense, wanting to investigate. However, his Buddhist sense couldn't leave his body no matter what. At this moment, Cai Hui and Xianxia's eyes also revealed extraordinary splendor. He couldn't help but turn his head. When he saw this situation, he couldn't help but be stunned. The fluorescent light of the inverted triangle was so alluring. It was like the supreme Buddhist light in the legends of Nirvana. Gu Zhen's heart was immediately attracted. Amitabha! Seeing that the huge palace was getting bigger and heavier, Gu Zhen felt that he was about to be suppressed by the entire palace. When he was powerless to resist, a voice that was like the sound of nature came out from his ears. Suddenly, the heavy pressure of the palace disappeared in an instant. Everything in front of Gu Zhen's eyes returned to normal. The inverted triangle palace still flickered with an enchanting fluorescent light in the distance. He was still in the same posture of turning his head. Amitabha! Gu Zhen's face turned red. He knew that his mind had been invaded by the magic circle. He hurriedly turned his head and put his palms together. This old monk thanks you for the reminder. Xiaohua smiled and handed the alms bowl to Gu Zhen. He said, Master has consumed too much psyche power. Now that you are free, naturally your vigilance is greatly reduced. It's nothing. Even if this little monk didn't remind you, you will wake up after a while. Alas, this old monk is ashamed. Gu Zhen knew his own situation and didn't hide it. The knot in this old monk's heart for many years has been untied. It's rare for me to be relaxed. My defense against the magic circle has also been reduced. However, just now in the water tunnel, if it wasn't for your Buddhist treasure water bottle, this old monk would have been buried in it like Xianxia and Cai Hui. From this point of view, this old monk also has to thank you. Xiaohua naturally had a guilty conscience. He was afraid that Gu Zhen would recognize the water bottle. Then he thought of Cai Hang. Now that he heard Gu Zhen only said it was the water bottle, he was delighted. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, Master, you're too kind. How can this disciple's cultivation be compared with yours? It's just that this disciple has a handy Buddhist treasure. Besides, you were the first to make a move. Most of the credit is taken. This little monk is nothing. Master Gu Zhen. On the side, Xian was naturally also captivated by the inverted triangular palace. She didn't wake up until Xiaohua chanted the name of Buddha. She hurriedly took out a small golden box from her bosom. After opening it, she took out a thumb-sized heart-shaped leaf. She interrupted the conversation between Gu Zhen and Xiaohua and handed it to Gu Zhen. She said, Stick this on your monk robe first. Jia Luo golden leaf. Gu Zhen's gaze fell on the golden heart-shaped leaf in Xian's hand. He couldn't help but cry out. Xian nodded and urged again. Yes, this is it. Master, you'd better stick it on quickly. Okay. Gu Zhen didn't dare to neglect. He reached out to take it and stuck it on his monk robe. When the Jia Luo golden leaf touched the robe, a layer of faint golden light appeared. This golden light flickered twice and even the Jialuo golden leaf itself disappeared. However, Gu Zhen's monk robe didn't have any special changes. Chapter 34-27. Little monk, you stick it on too. Xian grumpily handed the other leaf to Xiaohua. Not only was she not grateful for Xiaohua's help, she was also unhappy that Xiaohua didn't explain it to her in advance. Xiaohua didn't break it down. He took the golden leaf and stuck it on his monk's robe like Gu Zhen. Seeing the golden leaf disappear, Xiaohua carefully examined it for a moment. It was the same as seeing it. He didn't feel that the golden leaf had any special effect. Just as Xian and Ci Hui stuck the Gara golden leaves on their robes, Xiaohua took the opportunity to look around. This was an extremely large space. The water tunnel that Xiaohua and the other three rushed into had disappeared. There was only a smooth mirror under everyone's feet. The four figures were reflected in the mirror's fluorescent light, one positive and one negative. It was almost impossible to distinguish which one was real and which one was fake. In this space, other than the smooth mirror, there was only the inverted triangular palace in the distance. There was nothing else. It was abnormally clean. Needless to say, this palace should be the core of the array. Xiaohua tried to release his Buddhist sense. Like Gu Zhen, his spiritual sense couldn't leave his body. He then released his soul sense. Fortunately, although his soul sense was suppressed, it could still leave his body. Because Xian and the others were beside him, Xiaohua didn't try. Even so, Xiaohua was secretly proud. He had one more method than others. Xian Tanyue. Ci Hui at the side put the golden leaf on and whispered, "This Gara golden leaf is a treasure used by my Buddhist sect to conceal cultivation." This little monk heard that only Lei Yin Temple has some preserved. Now that you took out so many, could it be that this palace has a restriction that specifically restrains my Buddhist sect? You didn't explain it before. Now, can you explain it in detail so that we can make plans early? Hee hee. Xian smiled and said, "You didn't say before because the time wasn't right. If we couldn't come here, what's the point of saying more? Oh right, little monk, your clear water bottle is pretty good. Where did you get it?" "I picked it up in a cave." Xiaohua was originally listening attentively. Since Xian suddenly asked, he naturally answered casually. After he finished speaking, he immediately realized that Xian was tricking him. Although this trick was very old-fashioned, Xiaohua still fell for it. Humph. Although Xiaohua spoke the truth, Xian pouted and coldly said, "There are many caves in the Pure Land world, you want to pick one for me?" Sigh some people. I always treat the truth as a lie, but I also treat a lie as the truth. There's nothing I can do about it. Xiaohua sighed. My Buddha has a saying, if there is a Buddha in the heart, then everything is a Buddha. If there is no Buddha in the heart, then there is no Buddha in the sight. The vanity of man is nothing more than this. Little monk. Xian was a little embarrassed and angry. She stamped her feet in the air. That. Xian Tanyue. I don't quite understand. Could it be that this golden leaf of Canaan has some special use? Ci Hui hurriedly asked. Humph. Xian rolled her eyes at Xiaohua and said, "This golden leaf of Canaan can conceal a Buddhist's cultivation in the eyes of Arhat, but in the eyes of Taoist cultivators, it is called the invisible leaf. Many talismans used to conceal one's tracks in ancient times were refined from this item." At this point, Xian pointed at the inverted triangular palace in the distance and said, "This palace is called the Profound Water Palace. There are 2 profound water ancient beasts guarding the entrance. If we want to enter the Profound Water Palace through the Profound Water ancient beasts, we can only use the invisible leaf. Otherwise, we will be discovered before we can even get within 300 meters of the Profound Water Palace. I don't know how powerful these Profound Water ancient beasts are, but I don't think we can resist them." The Profound Water Palace? Xiaohua was a little puzzled when he heard this name. He opened his mouth to ask, but after muttering a few times, he didn't say anything. "What are you muttering about? If you have something to say it quickly. If you have something to say it quickly." Xian naturally understood and asked with a cold snort. Xiaohua scratched his hairless head and frowned. Actually, I want to ask Benefactress, is this profound water palace a place to hide treasures? Or is it a place to suppress demonic beasts? Is there a difference? Xianxia looked at Xiaohua warily and asked. Xiaohua smiled and said, of course there's a difference. If it's a palace to hide treasures, there must be many powerful restrictions inside. As long as we break the restrictions, we can obtain the treasures. No matter what it is, it'll be a harvest. Moreover, we don't need to be greedy. Depending on how much we take, we can just turn around and leave. If it's a place to suppress demonic beasts, we have to be careful. I'm afraid there aren't many treasures. Even if there are, they were left behind by people who came here in the past. Moreover, the immortal artifact that Benefactress mentioned should be the profound water palace's formation core. If you take the immortal artifact, the suppressed demonic beasts will definitely escape. Not to mention demonic beasts that harm all living beings. Even we can't escape, right? Earlier, I didn't dare to say too much for fear of disturbing Benefactress's mood. But now I have no choice but to say it. Hee, I didn't expect you to have such a compassionate heart after just shaving your head and becoming a monk. Xianxia rolled her eyes at Xiaohua again and said mockingly, however, I haven't entered yet. How would I know what's inside? The ink cloud pupil records that there's an immortal artifact here and nothing else. Let's go in first. If it's a treasure trove, that's the best. If that immortal artifact is used to suppress demonic beasts, then let's see if the demonic beasts are dead or not. Don't think that only your Buddhist sex Arhat has a compassionate heart. We Confucian cultivators aren't inferior to you. At this point, Xianxia felt that her words were somewhat harsh to the ears. She smiled embarrassedly at Cai Hui and Gu Zhen. However, Xiaohua didn't let Xianxia off the hook. He shook his head slightly and said, Benefactress Xan, I'll be honest with you. Earlier, I promised senior brother Cai Hui to come in and take a look because I was curious. Moreover, to tell Benefactress the truth, I felt like old friends with senior brother Cai Hui at first sight and also wanted to protect him. But now, take a look for yourself. You haven't even entered the profound water palace. It's only a water maze and a passage filled with poisonous water, yet it's already so powerful. It seems that aside from me, all three of you are injured. What does this mean? It means that the profound water palace is even more dangerous. It's far from a place that 4th or 5th grade cultivators like us can enter. There are ancient mysteries that we can't come into contact with inside. Even if we're lucky enough to enter that so-called immortal artifact, in my opinion, Benefactress Xianxia won't be able to obtain it. Rather than throwing our lives away and not being able to obtain the immortal artifact, why should we go in? Why don't we turn around and enjoy the scenery and have a heart-to-heart talk? Xiaohua then looked at Gu Zhen and said, moreover, Grandmaster Gu Zhen's reason for coming in was to see the corpse of his blood brother. Now, you've gotten what you wanted. Although the ancient Buddhist shrine is indeed attractive, it might not be in the profound water palace. Therefore, Grandmaster Gu Zhen, you should know the dangers of greed. You don't need me to say anything, right? Little monk, what do you mean by that? Xianxia was anxious and raised her eyebrows. Nothing. Xiaohua smiled and said, Benefactress, if you don't tell me the truth about the profound water palace, I won't enter. Perhaps senior brother Cai Hui is willing to go in with you, but Grandmaster Gu Zhen might not be willing, right? Although Grandmaster Gu Zhen didn't say anything, in Xianxia's eyes, Gu Zhen's silence meant that his thoughts were similar to Xiaohua's. After all, there were 2 profound water beasts guarding the profound water palace. Who knew if the golden Canaan leaf would be useful? Seeing Xianxia's expression fluctuating, Cai Hui said, Xian Sandanu, junior brother Tipu's words are reasonable. The 2 places from before caused me to be alarmed. I know I can't pass through those 2 obstacles alone. Of course, since we're already here, why don't we take a few more steps and enter the profound water palace to take a look? However, since we're going to enter the profound water palace, we should at least be aware of the dangers inside, right? Fellow Taoist Cai Hui, could it be that you don't trust me? Xianxia's face was slightly pale as she spoke softly. Cai Hui smiled and said, It's not that I don't trust you. I feel that Sandanu might be a little stubborn. Could it be that there's something you don't want to say that affects your judgment and makes you insist on entering the profound water palace while ignoring the dangers inside? If Sandinyu can tell us, then we can also make a judgment. Xian bit her lips and looked at Cai Hui and Gu Zhen, but she didn't look at Xiao Hua. Instead, she raised her head and looked at the profound water palace in the distance. After half the time it took to brew a cup of tea, she said, "Actually, I've indeed concealed some things from you. However, please don't worry. I don't have any ill intentions. Moreover, the dangers I told fellow Taoist Cai Hui about before were all recorded in the profound water palace." It's fine," Gu Zhan said with a smile. "This old monk has remembered every word of what Tan Yu said to this old monk. This old monk feels that what Tan Yu said is true." Xian bowed and said, "Many thanks for your trust, Grandmaster Gu Zhan. What I've concealed is the purpose of entering the profound water palace. My goal isn't the so-called immortal artifact." "Ah? Not the immortal artifact? Then what do you want?" Xiao Hua was surprised. "Is it that demon beast?" Xian didn't even look at Xiao Hua. It seemed like she was still angry with him. She only said to Gu Zhen, "The Dark Water Palace is the core of an ancient formation, and the core of the Dark Water Palace is the immortal artifact. Of course, the immortal artifact isn't the formation core of the Dark Water Palace. It's even to the extent that the Dark Water Palace isn't a place where treasures are kept. I'm sure of that. However, I don't know if the Profound Water Palace is used to suppress the immortal artifact, or if it's used to suppress some demon beast. What I do know is that the immortal artifact can suppress all living things in the 3 continents. If someone wants to suppress a criminal and make that criminal suffer under the immortal artifact, the Profound Water Palace is the best place to do so." "Oh, I understand." Gu Zhen nodded and revealed a look of realization. Xian Sandinyu is looking for someone. She's looking for someone who might be suppressed in the Profound Water Palace. Chapter 34-28. Alas, that's right. Xian looked disappointed. This person isn't a heinous criminal like Venerable Master thinks, nor is he a treacherous person. He shouldn't be tortured like this. Xian paused and smiled wryly. "This matter involves my secrets, so forgive me for not being able to speak of it. My purpose in coming here is to see if this person is here. If he is, I want to see if I can rescue him. That's all. As for the immortal artifact, I'm only at the 4th grade of origin energy. I'm afraid I can't take it for myself, right?" Xian glared fiercely at Xiao Hua and continued, "That's what I wanted to say. If some people aren't satisfied and don't wish to enter the Profound Water Palace, I won't force them. However, if he wanted to leave this ancient formation, the only way out was inside the Blackwater Palace. Of course, if anyone thinks they're strong enough to break the ancient formation, feel free to use your cultivation. I'll wait and see." Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he saw Xian roll her eyes. Ahem. Cai Hui coughed twice, smiled and persuaded, "Junior brother Tipu, in this little monk's opinion, what Xian Tanua said is right. At this time, they have been honest with each other, she did not hide anything. Think about it, if she didn't want to say anything and only said that the exit was within the Profound Water Palace, I'm sure Junior brother would have to enter based on that alone, right? Why would she make up more lies?" That's true. Xiao Hua nodded. He also felt that Xian's words were true since she'd been forced to this point. "Since that's the case, why don't you help her?" Cai Hui felt that Xiao Hua's Buddhist abilities might surpass hers, so she took advantage of the situation and said, "Saving a life is better than building a 7-storied pagoda. Junior brother, don't tell me you don't know this? Isn't she still alive?" Xiao Hua curled his lips. "Haha, it'll be too late if she's dead." Gu Zhen laughed. Xian Tanua said that there might be a Buddhist treasure within the ancient formation, and even an ancient Buddhist luster. It must be in the Profound Water Palace, right? Xian was about to stomp her feet when she heard Xiao Hua's words. However, she could only reply, "If Mo Yuntong's records are correct, it should be in the Profound Water Palace. However, I don't know the exact location." "Look, little monk, come with us. You'll benefit from it as well," said Gu Zhen. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said with a smile, "Benefactress, you just said that you only want to see if there is anyone suppressed under the immortal artifact. Presumably, you have also prepared a method to rescue that person." "Yes, This one has indeed made some preparations. Xian didn't hide anything and spoke the truth. It's special. You don't plan on taking that immortal artifact either. Xiaohua immediately asked. What? Junior apprentice brother Tipu. You want to take that immortal artifact? Xiaohui was shocked. What if the immortal artifact is used to suppress powerful demonic beasts? Aren't you helping the evildoer? Hee. What if the demonic beast is not suppressed? What if this profound water palace is only used to suppress the immortal artifact? Xiaohua said with a smile. Can this little monk try to subdue this immortal artifact? Xian coldly looked at Xiaohua and asked curiously. You're just a little monk from a Buddhist sect. What do you want this immortal artifact for? Even if you can subdue it, will you be able to use it? I'm willing. If I can't use it, can't I give it to someone else? Even if I can't give it to someone else, can't I hang it in my meditation room and look at it myself? Xiaohua's neck stiffened as he retorted sarcastically. Greed, oh greed. Xiaohui lectured Xiaohua. You just reminded Ancestor Gu Zhen. Now you're the one who's making the mistake. Forget it. This little monk was just saying. There's no need to mention it. Xiaohua waved his hand. He also felt that he was being delusional. An immortal artifact was definitely not a spiritual artifact or spiritual treasure. It had long surpassed the scope of his control. Since that's the case, little monk, you've said so much. Has your psychokinesis recovered? Can we proceed forward? Xian asked Xiaohua in a bad mood. Xiaohua shrugged and smiled. This little monk has more or less recovered. I wonder how senior brother Xiaohui and Grandmaster Gu Zhen are doing? Xiaohui didn't use much psychokinesis. She nodded slightly and looked at Gu Zhen. Gu Zhen nodded as well. This old monk has rested enough. We can enter the mysterious water palace. Xian heard this and said, We have the invisible leaf on us. The ancient beast can't see us. Of course, we can't use any psychokinesis or magic power. We only need to fly to within 100 feet of the palace and walk through the palace gates. Once we enter the palace, the ancient beast will ignore us even if we overturn the heavens. All right, we'll do as Xianxia says. Gu Zhen nodded. We'll fly to within 100 feet of the palace. This old monk will go first, followed by Xianxia. Xiaohui and Tipu will bring up the rear as usual. Seeing that no one had any objections, Gu Zhen took the lead. When he was within 100 feet of the palace, he landed early and silently made his way to the palace. Xiaohua followed Xiaohui and descended from the cloud. His feet stepped on the smooth surface of the mirror. The surface of the mirror looked smooth, but his feet were soft. It was as if he was stepping on water plants. There was no need to be too careful because there was no sound at all. Xiaohua looked down and released his soul sense. He couldn't see anything strange about the mirror. It was like a wall, blocking his soul sense and preventing him from seeing what was going on inside. Strange. Xiaohua didn't understand. The mysterious water palace might be difficult to enter, but in front of it, if one has the strength of a 5th or 6th stage cultivator, or some special divine ability, it's not impossible to enter. If a female disciple from a scholarly family like Xian can come, others can as well. Why didn't they leave any traces behind? Even if they don't have a small chinkuan pouch, it's normal to leave some bones behind, right? Were they all eaten by the mysterious water beasts? Xiaohua couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. He turned to look at the mysterious water palace 100 feet away. Perhaps it was because of the distance, or perhaps it was because of the mysterious water palace's devilish light. Xiaohua only felt that the triangular shape of the palace was very strange. But now that he was closer, the light on the palace's surface dimmed, revealing the mysterious water palace's true appearance. Rather than calling the mysterious water palace a palace, it was more accurate to say that it was a building made up of 4 triangles. The huge triangular structure towered in front of everyone's eyes with sharp edges and corners. It was very different from the smooth and flat palaces they usually saw. On the other side of the triangular structure, there were layers of protrusions in a very regular pattern. These protrusions were like window frames, but also like doors. They were strung together like some sort of rune, but they didn't give off any fluctuations of spiritual energy. The only thing that did give off fluctuations was the faint, watery light that flowed over the protrusions. The light was made up of very strange runes, like flowing water that constantly flowed between the protrusions. The dazzling light was also emitted by the flowing runes. Xiaohua looked at the strands of spiritual energy that flowed with the runes and gathered from the space, creating extremely orderly and rhythmic fluctuations of spiritual energy. He fell into deep thought. He had seen many formations and many spiritual energy fluctuations, but the spiritual energy fluctuations of the mysterious water palace gave him a strange feeling. Of course, these fluctuations were undoubtedly from the Dao Sex formations. Although the runes on the mysterious water palace were obscure and extremely simple, Xiaohua could still see traces of the Dao Sex talismans. However, the seemingly smooth flow of runes made Xiaohua feel as if there was a fishbone stuck in his throat. It was just like when he overused his Dharma eye in the vein of space that day. Could it be that this ancient formation is different from the one now? Xiaohua frowned and pondered as he walked. At that moment, an extremely loud rumble resounded in the space, and the huge mysterious water palace actually began to slowly rotate. As the mysterious water palace rotated, the orderly protrusions on the triangular structure on the side of the mysterious water palace slowly opened. Balls of emerald light flew out from the protrusions and immediately transformed into strange runes. Thousands of runes gathered together and emitted a buzzing sound. A huge suction force was generated from the runes and rushed towards the walls of the space. Puff, puff, puff. The suction force landed on the mirror-like walls of water, creating huge whirlpools that were extremely similar to the whirlpools on the Nightmare Reef. At the same time, gusts of wind were generated from the whirlpools. A huge amount of spiritual energy rushed out from the whirlpools and fell on the triangular structure of the mysterious water palace. Oh no! Xiaohua and the others were alarmed. The change in the mysterious water palace had come too suddenly. The four of them had no time to react, especially now that they were within 300 meters of the mysterious water palace. If what Xian said was true, then any spell or Buddhist ability would attract the attention of the mysterious water ancient beast. Although Xiaohua and the others had yet to see the mysterious water ancient beast and didn't know when it would appear, if they used any ability to resist this change, it would definitely attract the attention of the mysterious water ancient beast. But what if they didn't use their ability to resist? The wind was so bitingly cold and even stronger. Xiaohua's body might be able to withstand it, but Xian and the others definitely couldn't. What should they do? Benefactor Xian, Xiaohua called out almost without hesitation. How about we just charge into the mysterious water palace with the wind? Xian's face was pale. She almost cried out, "Please don't do that." Mo Yuntong clearly said that the profound water palace is the core of the ancient formation and has the most powerful restrictions. The entrance to the profound water palace is the only safe way to enter. If you try to enter from any other place, you'll die. Roar! At this moment, a deafening roar came from the direction of the mysterious water palace. Mysterious water ancient beast. Everyone who was trying their best to maintain their balance turned ghastly pale. Wasn't this the perfect time to say that blessings don't come in pairs and misfortunes don't come singly? Chapter 34-29. Now that things have come to this, I'm afraid this is the only way. Xiaohua's figure gradually floated up. His soul sense swept through the water-type spiritual energy around him like a whirlwind. He hastily waved his hand and held the clear water bottle in his hand. He had no choice but to risk being discovered by the ancient beast. He formed a seal with his right hand and hit the clear water bottle. With a light sound, a faint blue color rushed out of the bottle. Xiaohua hastily shouted, "This is innate primordial water. Everyone, don't look directly at it." Xian and the others were originally flustered, hesitating whether or not to use their divine abilities. When they saw Xiaohua take out the clear water bottle, they also looked at it with their eyes. When the innate primordial water appeared, the three's gazes had already fallen into it. Their minds stagnated, and their faces revealed absent-minded expressions. Fortunately, Xiaohua's shout came in time. Everyone was shocked and hurriedly focused their minds. Soon after, they understood what Xiaohua was thinking. At the same time, they closed their eyes and hurriedly used all kinds of methods. Very quickly, They stabilized their footsteps in the innate pure water. Since everyone had stabilized their footing, Xiaohua's innate primordial water also enveloped everyone. The previous woo-woo sounds of ghostly wails and wolf howls instantly quieted down. There was no sound in the innate primordial water, but the situation outside the innate primordial water grew increasingly grim. Countless water-type spiritual energy of heaven and earth let out hoarse roars and wantonly collided in the air. A huge amount of spiritual energy of heaven and earth also rushed in where the innate primordial water was. But when this pure spiritual energy of heaven and earth rushed into the innate primordial water, it immediately became a part of the innate primordial water. Not even a trace of a ripple was formed. The previously very tyrannical beast roared again, but this time, it wasn't just one beast, but two. One pounced in the direction of Xiaohua and the other went in the opposite direction. Along with this roar, a dark blue figure with the same color as the innate primordial water flashed in mid-air and arrived several hundred feet above the innate primordial water. It was a strange beast that was about 10 feet long. It looked like an ordinary leopard. Not only were the muscles on its 4 muscular legs bulging, there were also wisps of blue mist lingering around it. On the ferocious beast's head, the 2 eyes emitted a blue light. The beast's mouth with long fangs was now raised as the beast's head rose. Wave after wave of world spirit energy rushed into the black water ancient beast's mouth. Looking at the back of the ancient beast, there were 2 feather wings that were a few feet long flashing slightly. In front of the feather wings, there were several sharp bone spurs that were shining with a blue brilliance. A tail that was about 10 feet long casually curled in the air, like a spirit snake. However, this spirit snake was really powerful. With a slight swing, not only was the hurricane cut apart, even the void had cracks in it. The ancient beast flew above the primordial water and opened its mouth. It took a deep breath and its body trembled involuntarily. Even the blue light around it trembled as if it was breathing. Then, the ancient beast raised its head slightly and spread its wings again. Just as it was about to fly away, the ancient beast's gaze fell on the primordial water below it. Ew! Another extremely loud roar rang out. The profound water ancient beast flapped its wings as if it was facing a great enemy. The bone spikes protruding from its wings extended another few feet. What was special was that the blue light on the bone spikes was even deeper. 100 meters was like taking a stroll in the park for the ancient beast. With a flap of its wings, its entire body blurred. When the brilliance faded, it had already pounced to the side of the primordial water. The ancient beast looked at the primordial water and its eyes emitted a brilliant blue light. The blue light shot into the primordial water and immediately disappeared. The mysterious water ancient beast hurriedly shook its head as if it had a headache. Then, the ancient beast opened its mouth and spat out a mouthful of blue light without hesitation. The fist-sized light emitted a whistling sound, covering the sound of the wind in the space. It was enough to show the power of the light. Boom! The light rushed into the innate primordial water. The primordial water, which did not have a single ripple under the impact of countless spiritual energies, started to sway rapidly. As it swayed, the light suddenly exploded, as if a powerful hand was trying to tear the primordial water apart. Although Xiaohua couldn't see the situation outside, he didn't dare to be careless when he saw the primordial water being attacked. He hurriedly activated the bottle and more primordial water rushed out. After a while, the primordial water that had almost been blasted to pieces slowly healed and returned to its original appearance. The Xianxia ancient beast opened its mouth again. This time, no blue light rushed out. Instead, a great suction force appeared, as if it wanted to swallow the primordial water into its mouth. The Xianxia ancient beast was an ancient monster that was born with the ability to control water. Even the Xiantian primordial water could not escape its control. As the ancient beast opened its mouth, the thin layer of primordial water immediately rose and shot into the ancient beast's mouth. Xiaohua, who was hiding in the primordial water, was shocked again. He was guarding against the ancient beast's attack, but he didn't expect the ancient beast to be greedy and want to swallow the primordial water. Caught off guard, not only was the primordial water sucked up half a foot of the primordial water, even the bottle almost fell from his hand. Xiaohua's heart clenched again. He hurriedly activated his telekinesis and hit the bottle with Buddhist seals, trying his best to resist the ancient beast's suction force. Unfortunately, Xiaohua's opponent was not a profound ancient beast. Even if he used all his strength on telekinesis, he was far from being able to resist the ancient beast's gentle opening of its mouth. The primordial water was being sucked up and was about to be thrown into the ancient beast's mouth. Once the primordial water disappeared, Xiaohua and the others would naturally be exposed. At that time, their lives would probably be in danger. Of course, his own life was more precious than the primordial water. Xiaohua understood this better than anyone else. Therefore, he didn't hesitate to pour out the primordial water from the bottle. He even happily poured out the poisonous water that he just put into the bottle. He wanted to see what would happen when the poisonous water was sent into the ancient beast's mouth. The Xianxia ancient beast was clearly taken aback by the surging poisonous water. It looked around in confusion and then impatiently opened its mouth. As it roared, the poisonous water and the Xiantian primordial water obediently fell into the Xianxia ancient beast's mouth. Hee. Although Xiaohua couldn't see the situation outside the primordial water, just the thought of the poisonous water falling into the ancient beast's mouth made him secretly happy. Xian and the others didn't know what was going on outside. They couldn't even open their eyes, so now they were like blind people. Previously it was still silent, but now, it was as if thunder and lightning were flashing in the surroundings. It was even more frightening than the sound of the wind in the space. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the gluttonous ancient beast didn't swallow much of the primordial water, but drank a lot of the poisonous water. It seemed to be choking a little. Its body trembled slightly, and light flowed out like water. Another roar sounded. It seemed to come from another ancient beast. It seemed to have lost its patience and stopped devouring. Then, it raised its head and roared in response. The two ancient beasts roared at each other. Then, the ancient beast opened its mouth again, as if it wouldn't stop until it had devoured all of the primordial water. Suddenly, a strange rumbling sound came from the slowly rotating triangle of the profound water palace in the distance. A faint layer of mist seeped out from the blue radiance, and the entire protrusion of the profound water palace began to tremble rapidly. Along with the trembling, an indescribable fluctuation filled the entire space. In an instant, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was thrown into chaos. Not only that, but when the fluctuation came, the ancient beast was stunned. A trace of fear actually flashed through its eyes. Before its fear disappeared, a series of sobbing sounds came from the vortexes in the walls. This time, it wasn't pure water-type spiritual energy that rushed out of the vortexes, but true Saint River water mixed with bones, corpses, birds, and fish. After the formation was opened, the Saint River water poured in like a formation. The ancient beast seemed to be extremely shocked. It no longer cared about the primordial water and raised its head to roar. It spread its wings and turned into a stream of light, rushing towards the profound water palace. The profound water palace, which looked like it was being rotated by a giant, also slowly stopped. In just a moment, the entire space was filled with river water. Apart from the thousands of tiny vortexes that were still spinning rapidly, the so-called walls had disappeared. The entire profound water palace was completely submerged in the Saint River. Xiaohua was overjoyed to see the ancient beast's suction force disappear, but he didn't dare to be careless. He still carefully urged his telekinesis to control the suction force of the clear water bottle, preventing the ancient beast from launching a sneak attack. Junior brother Ti-Pu. Hui closed his eyes and didn't dare to release his Buddhist awareness, but he still keenly sensed the change in Xiaohua's telekinesis. He didn't speak when Xiaohua's telekinesis was at its peak, but now that he felt much calmer, he said softly, "Is the ancient beast nearby? Can the primordial water stop the ancient beast? Did the ancient beast attack the primordial water just now?" Hui's voice was very soft, so soft that he didn't want to disturb the ancient beast outside the primordial water. However, it was quiet inside the primordial water, so the other three heard him clearly. Shoo! Xiaohua also lowered his voice and said, "The ancient beast came just now and seemed to have discovered us." "Oh, it's not us. It must have discovered the innate true water and wanted to devour it. However, this little monk fed it with the poisonous water just now and it's not moving anymore. I wonder if it was poisoned to death by the poisonous water." "Humph, how is that possible?" Xian snorted and said contemptuously, "The ancient beast is a part of the profound water palace. The poisonous water is also a part of the ancient formation. It would be a huge joke if the ancient beast was poisoned to death by the water." Chapter 34:30. Tisase. If they weren't poisoned to death, why don't you tell us why the ancient beast stopped attacking? Xiao Hua smacked his lips as he chuckled at Xian. Xian didn't back down. I can't see the outside, and I can't release my consciousness either. How would I know? You're the one who controls the innate primordial water, so why don't you tell us why the ancient beast stopped attacking? Nonsense, would I not tell you if I knew? Xiao Hua scoffed at Xian's argument. I can't see anything just like you. Ah! So you can't see either. Xian closed her eyes, almost covering her mouth to hide her laughter. However, after a few chuckles, Xian asked anxiously, Little monk, is the ancient beast Xianxia gone or not? I'm afraid we don't have enough time. Benefactress, you're a classic example of someone who values money over life. Xiao Hua couldn't help but laugh. Even if you want to find someone, you have to protect your own life first. Hi, Xian sighed. The only way out is inside the profound water palace. If we want to save our lives, we have to go inside. As the saying goes, we have to go in whether we're alive or dead. Damn it, that's right. Xiao Hua was nervous at Xian's grim tone. He waited for another pipe of smoke before secretly opening a crack in the innate primordial water and releasing his soul sense. The ancient beast really is gone. The profound water palace has returned to how it was before. Xiao Hua was stunned, but he didn't dare to let his guard down. He expanded his soul sense to scan the area, and then opened up a bigger crack. He peeked through the crack with his naked eye, and when he saw that everything had returned to normal, Xiao Hua withdrew the innate primordial water, and said in a low voice, All right, you can open your eyes now. When Xian and the others opened their eyes, they saw that the palace was exactly the same as before. The enormous profound water palace was still in its inverted triangular shape. As for whether or not it was the same as the one they saw before, no one knew. Little monk, Xian bit her lips and whispered, Thank you. Shoo. Xiao Hua whispered back. Don't say it now, or I'll be cocky. If the ancient beast sees us, we'll be in trouble. Xian paused, then covered her mouth. Her face was a little red, as if she wanted to laugh but didn't dare. It was difficult to hold it in. Cai Hui looked helplessly at the two. Xian, let's talk inside the palace first. Xian covered her mouth and led the way. After walking for several dozen meters, she turned back and whispered, That profound water ancient beast is right in front of the profound water palace's entrance. Normally, it won't be more than 30 meters away from the entrance. Now that we're here, we can't speak or use any telekinesis. Otherwise, we'll attract the beast's attention. As she spoke, Xian took a look at the golden leaf of Canaan that was stuck to her body. After testing it a little, she felt relieved and tiptoed forward. The ancient beast is at the gate. Xiao Hua was stunned. He couldn't help but look below the profound water palace. After all, Xiao Hua had already checked the surroundings. He didn't seem to have seen any ancient beast. However, when he deliberately glanced at the bottom of the palace, sure enough, there were two statues that were almost the same color as the palace at the nail-like location. So these are the ancient beasts that attacked the innate primordial water. Xiao Hua stared straight at the motionless statues for a moment, thinking in his heart, weren't they abnormally fierce just now? Why are they standing there now? Why do they look like dead statues? Sigh, that's right. The profound water palace is so huge, and the ancient beasts are so small and motionless. Who knows if they're profound water beasts? At this moment, the profound water beasts really stood there like clay statues. Their eyes, which were as bright as stars, were abnormally dim. There was no light at all. However, Xiao Hua and the others only glanced at the beasts. They didn't dare to meet their eyes. They even gradually approached the profound water palace. Looking at the two beasts that looked exactly like the statues in front of the temple, they couldn't help but feel a sense of absurdity. Yes, if they hadn't heard the profound water beasts roar earlier, if they hadn't experienced Xiao Hua using his innate primordial water to resist them with his innate primordial water, and if they didn't have the records of profound water beasts in the ink cloud pupil, they would never have thought that these two lifeless statues were real ancient beasts. Suppressing the indescribable fear in his heart, Xiaohua raised his head and looked at the profound water palace that was even more oppressive than a mountain. Under the huge inverted triangle was a pillar that was dozens of meters tall. A pillar that was dozens of meters tall would be considered huge if it were anywhere else. However, under the profound water palace, it seemed so thin and fragile. A chill appeared in the eyes of the others. They were really afraid that the inverted triangle would suddenly fall on them and smash them into meat paste. After a few more meters, the four would be close to the profound water beasts. At the front, Xian couldn't help but stop slightly. The two profound water beasts stood there and looked forward calmly. The distance between them wasn't small, at least dozens of meters. However, in Xian's eyes, this distance was as narrow as the pillar under the profound water palace. An indescribable aura spread out in front of the profound water palace. Perhaps it was the residual power of the profound water beasts, or perhaps it was the formation's restriction after the profound water palace absorbed the energy of heaven and earth. In any case, the aura made it difficult for Xian to breathe. In the face of such a scene, Xian was secretly regretting in her heart. She felt that she had underestimated this ancient formation. However, this regret only lasted for a moment. A wave of stubbornness rose from the bottom of her heart. Humph, this place is so dangerous. You actually imprisoned me here. Since you're so heartless then, I don't need to think anymore. With this thought, Xian's trembling legs became firm. Step by step, she walked past the profound water beasts and arrived in front of the profound water palace's pillar. Fortunately, Xian's actions didn't attract the profound water beasts' attention. They remained motionless and didn't even release a trace of their innate spirit. Seeing that Xian didn't attract the profound water beast's attention, Gu Zhan and the others calmed down and followed her to the pillar. Hee. This profound water palace is so strange. Xiaohua walked past the Blackwater Ancient Beast and unconsciously looked back at the Blackwater Ancient Beast's folded wings and the coiled tail on the ground. He thought to himself, are these the two Blackwater Ancient Beasts from just now? Why don't I look at them? If they were living things, then I'd be fine with them standing there like statues. But why are their tails coiled up in the same way? That's not possible, is it? Xiaohua probed with his soul sense and carefully scanned the profound water beast's tail on the left a few times. Before Xiaohua could use his soul sense to check out the rest of the profound water beast's tail, Xian stopped again. Xiaohua didn't have time to check the Xianxia ancient beasts. He turned his head and saw Xian raise her hand and take out 4 blue beads from the sleeve of her palace dress. She waved her hand and the 4 beads silently stuck to the pillar. Then, Xian looked back at the 2 Xianxia ancient beasts with lingering fear. She opened her mouth and 4 golden streams of Zhan Qi hit the 4 beads at the same time like 4 flying swords. Shwa! The 4 pearls simultaneously emitted a blue ripple of brilliance. This brilliance overflowed several times above the pillar, and the pillar also produced a blue brilliance. At the same time, this blue brilliance also swayed along with the brilliance of the pearls, just like layers upon layers of water ripples. When she saw the ripples appear, Xian took a few steps forward and reached her hand into the ripples. Her fair and soft hand sank into the ripples. As Xian lifted her hand, it was as if she had lifted a bead curtain. A gap appeared in the pillar, and Xian walked in without hesitation. Halfway through, Xian even turned back to look at the 3 of them and indicated for them to follow. Xiaohua and the others didn't dare delay. One by one, they lifted their hands and flashed into the gap. Once the 4 of them were inside, the 4 beads remained embedded in the pillar. Ripples of blue light flowed through the beads. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the light slowly dimmed and disappeared. Finally, the beads disappeared into the pillar. There was no longer any movement outside the profound water palace. The 2 profound water beasts stood there for tens of thousands of years. It was as if the entire space had returned to normal. However, this calmness only lasted for a few breaths of time. The beast that Xiaohua had just scanned with his soul sense moved its tail first, trembling slightly. This trembling then spread throughout its entire body. Following that, the beast's 4 hooves moved, the beast's head moved, and finally, its lifeless eyes moved. The Blackwater Ancient Beast looked around in confusion. It then glanced at the other Blackwater Ancient Beast on the right that was standing still. After which, It spread its wings and turned into a blue light that flew a few rounds outside the Black Water Palace. When it did not discover anything, it pushed off the ground and charged into the sky as if it was flat ground. Its body landed on a protruding part of the inverted triangle. The profound water beast opened its mouth and spat out a mouthful of blue light onto the protrusion. With a crack, the protrusion floated into the air. The profound water beast didn't even look back as it charged into the gap below the protrusion. When the profound water beast disappeared, the protrusion fell back down. In a flash of light, the inverted triangle returned to its original state. The profound water beast entered the profound water palace. Xianxia and the others were unaware of the danger that was about to befall them. Xianxia stood dumbly in front of the profound water palace's doors as he looked at the scene in front of him. His heart was filled with disbelief. Chapter 34-31. Right in front of Xiaohua's eyes was a transparent triangular palace. Everything inside the palace was made of triangles that looked like colored glass. Even the ground beneath Xiaohua's feet, the top of their heads, and even the palace door behind them were triangles. What was special was that these triangles were exactly the same size. The water-blue brilliance flowing along the edges of the triangles also had a similar rhythm. At a glance, it was difficult to distinguish any triangle from any other. At a glance, there were countless strange triangles inside the mysterious water palace. Not only did Xiaohua and the others feel like they were floating in a triangular space, but when their gazes fell on the thousands of transparent mirrors, each mirror reflected the 4 people who had entered the mysterious water palace. The strangest thing was that their gazes could be refracted. In an instant, Xiaohua's gaze seemed to have seen countless mirrors, as if he had seen countless versions of himself. A kind of dizziness arose in Xiaohua's heart. He couldn't help but close his eyes, not daring to look any further. However, even so, the fear that came from looking at each mirror remained in the bottom of his heart. Moreover, in the darkness before him, there were still countless broken mirrors flashing, and in each mirror was a pair of horrified eyes. Damn it! Xiaohua almost blurted out a curse. This mysterious water palace was too deceptive. The shock from walking past the mysterious water ancient beast had yet to subside, and the feeling of being lucky had yet to subside. In an instant, it gave his eyes such a terrifying baptism. Even a cultivator with a firm Tao heart like him couldn't help but feel his heart palpitate. Fellow immortals. Xianxia's voice trembled. Clearly, she had been caught off guard. As soon as she recovered her wits, she immediately reminded them, "Remember to guard your heart and keep your mind clear." Mo Yuntong didn't mention the dangers of the mysterious water palace. She only said that thousands of Dharma images would appear here. If you couldn't find your true form, you wouldn't be able to find your way out. Even I didn't think that this Dharma idol would be so deadly. If we weren't cultivators, we would have lost ourselves just by looking at it. Who knows which one is the real person in the mirror? Ci Hui also didn't dare to raise her head and whispered, "The eyes are the heart, and the soul is born from the heart. Dazzling the eyes is seizing the soul." His gaze wandered as he looked at his feet. Beneath his feet was the same as the surroundings in front of him. There were also many tiny triangles. Xiaohua calmed his mind and slowly raised his eyes. His gaze was not too far away, but it was also rapidly sweeping around. This situation was somewhat similar to the innate primordial water. He already had a similar experience. When he saw that things were not going well, he immediately retracted his gaze. Among the 4 of them, he was the one who suffered the least damage. However, he still sighed with emotion. This primordial magic formation is really powerful. Now that we can't release our Buddha's consciousness, we can only rely on our eyes. Who knows that such simple eyes can also be taken advantage of by the formation? Amitba. Fortunately, I can't release my Buddha's consciousness. Guzhen's Dharma was not as good as Ci Hui's, so it was difficult for him to find himself when he was lost. He was the one who suffered the most damage among the 4. At this moment, he put his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. If the Buddha's consciousness is released, it will also be lost. It will be harder to find it than the mind. Xian shook her head. Master Guzhen is wrong. The profound water palace's formation was set up for us Confucian cultivators' clear sight arts. Because this place imprisons divine sense and Buddha's consciousness, the Taoist's divine sense cannot leave the body. Only our Confucian clear sight arts can be used. In order to prevent us from finding the true entrance to the profound water palace, the primordial magic formation set up this secret formation here. Oh. So Xianxia can use the clear sight arts in front of the profound water palace? Guzhen was slightly taken aback. Xianxia nodded slightly. This one can use it, but it's not even 10% of my usual power. Xianxia then looked to the left and smiled bitterly. As for this place, this one wouldn't dare to use it even if I had 10 times the courage. So the palace door where the profound water ancient beast isn't the true entrance to the profound water palace. Xiaohua took a deep breath and said with a smile, "In that case, the triangular maze in front of us is the real entrance?" Xianxia nodded. That's right. Only one of these tens of thousands of mirrors is the true entrance to the profound water palace. We must find it from there. Damn it, how is this possible? Xiaohua jumped up and shouted, "Not only do we lack Buddhist awareness, we don't even dare to look. How are we supposed to find the entrance?" Ahem. Ahem. Junior brother Tipu, watch your mouth. Ci Hui hastily coughed and reminded him, "Don't let the Buddha blame you." Amit ba. Senior brother is right. Xiaohua became listless and put his palms together. However, he cursed inwardly. Alas, it's this Zhao's primordial spirit that shaved the Buddha Sarira, not this Zhao's. This Xiao was just casually complaining. Ci Hui was very satisfied with Xiaohua's reaction. She looked at Xianxia with a smile and said, "Since this is recorded in Mo Yuntong, then Xianxia must have made preparations?" "Yes, indeed." Xianxia nodded. This is the last record of the primordial magic formation in Mo Yuntong. At the same time, it's also the problem this one has been pondering for the longest time. To tell you the truth, fellow Taoist Ci Hui, this one has racked my brains for 10 years. It was only after meeting you that I suddenly saw the light. Little monk. Ci Hui was slightly stunned. However, she immediately raised her eyebrows and said with a smile, "This little monk understands." Previously, Tanyue and this little monk talked about this matter. So it's used here. If it's as Xianxia thought, this is indeed the best way to break this maze. However, speaking of this, Ci Hui frowned again. This little monk doesn't quite understand. How should we cast the spell? Xianxia glanced at Xiaohua's thoughtful expression and then at Guzhen's confused face. She smiled bitterly again. This one only knows about the primordial spirit and the Dharma idol. As for how to find the primordial spirit from the Dharma idol, I'm afraid that's something you have to consider. However, in this one's opinion, it's really difficult for you to find the Dharma idol from the thousands of mirrors by yourself. Don't you have Tipu and Master Guzhen now? It should be much easier for you. After hearing Xianxia's words, Xiaohua understood a little. The so-called primordial spirit was naturally the physical body. There were thousands of triangular mirrors in the maze of the mysterious water palace. Each mirror could reflect the intruder's shadow. However, there was only one real mirror. All the other mirrors were illusions of the maze. It was precisely these mirrors that had the effect of bewitching the mind. The real eye of the formation only played the role of illusions. Since the maze only worked on Confucian cultivators' eye-clearing technique and the naked eye of cultivators, all Buddhist senses, divine thoughts, and elemental thoughts could be used. Since the Dharma idol of the Buddhist sect was condensed from karma, it wasn't restricted by the maze. Therefore, the mirror couldn't reflect the Dharma idol's shadow. However, the problem was that even if Ci Hui or Guzhen released their Dharma idols, how would they find the mirror that could reflect the Dharma idol's shadow? What would they use to check? Thinking of this, Xiaohua's mind raced. He had many methods. He could release the Dharma idol, release the Buddha's Sarira, or release his nascent soul. He could deal with all of them. Even the simplest method was to use his soul sense. Perhaps he could find a way out. Of course, Xiaohua could also use the heavenly vision of the Dharma eyes. However, he couldn't be sure if his Dharma eyes could defeat this ancient formation. Although Master Guzhen wasn't proficient in Buddhism, he understood after hearing this. He said loudly, "Ci Hui, if there's anything you need this old monk to do, just tell me. This old monk doesn't understand Buddhism, but I do know some Buddhist divine skills. They can be of help. Ci Hui thought for a moment and said tentatively, Grandmaster, this disciple doesn't understand the Dharma idol technique. However, the Saraira that I cultivate does have the image of a Dharma idol. How about this disciple release the Saraira first to see its effect? Grandmaster, why don't you use the Dharma idol technique? I'll listen to you. Guzhen naturally had no objections. Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat. He thought to himself, the Saraira of a Dharma idol? Isn't this the Buddha's Saraira? This monk Ci Hui really has some background. However, Buddhist light surged around Ci Hui's body. After a moment, it slowly disappeared. Ci Hui's expression was somewhat unnatural. She sighed and said, not only does the mysterious water palace confine Buddhist consciousness, but it also confines this little monk's Bodhi Saraira. It seems this little monk can't do anything. Bodhi Saraira. When Guzhen heard Ci Hui's words, he couldn't help but reveal a shocked expression. He cried out involuntarily, Ci Hui, you actually cultivated the Bodhi Saraira? Looking at this grandmaster who couldn't refine karma to form a Saraira, Ci Hui's expression was somewhat uneasy. She smiled and said, all right, Grandmaster knows. This disciple was lucky enough to refine the Bodhi Saraira in this life. However, the golden body has yet to form, so I dare not embarrass myself in front of Grandmaster. Alas! Ci Hui couldn't hide the disappointment on her face. She sighed and didn't speak again. Xian raised her eyebrows and said with a smile, Fellow immortal Ci Hui, I've known you for so long, but this is the first time I've heard you talk about refining the Bodhi Saraira. This is second only to the Buddha's Saraira in your Buddhist sect. With this Saraira, not only will you be able to attain the golden body of a bodhisattva in this life, but you'll also be able to attain the supreme golden body in the future. Ci Hui hurriedly put her palms together and humbly recited the name of Buddha. She said, Amitabha, this is the karma of this little monk's several lifetimes of cultivation. There's nothing to show off. Perhaps this little monk was like Grandmaster Guzhen in the past, specializing in the lineage of Dharma protectors. Later on, this little monk obtained an opportunity and gained the favor of Buddha. Today I can finally fulfill my wish. Xian looked so excited that she almost forgot that she was in the mysterious water palace. She cupped her hands and said, Fellow immortal, you're too humble. Being able to refine the Bodhi Saraira isn't something that can be exchanged with several lifetimes of cultivation. If it weren't for the profound Dharma and profound opportunities, how could it be possible? I didn't expect this little girl to be acquainted with a bodhisattva of the Buddhist sect. It's truly fortunate. Chapter 34-32. Ahem. Before Xian could finish, Ci Hui coughed twice and even winked at her, interrupting her. Xian Tanyue, no matter what kind of relic it can't be used in the profound water palace. What's the use of that? It's not as useful as Ancestor Guzhen's golden Buddha statue. That's true. Xian suddenly came to her senses. Her eyes narrowed and she almost covered her mouth with her hand. She hurriedly covered it up. Everyone has their shortcomings and strengths. That's right. To the side, Xiao Hua frowned. He knew that if Ci Hui's Bodhi relic couldn't be used, then his Buddha relic wouldn't be able to leave his body. Since his relic couldn't leave his body, then his nascent soul couldn't either. Perhaps he could only use his soul sense and heavenly law embodiment technique. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua was about to quietly release his soul awareness. Roar! Guzhen roared and clenched his fists. Buddha light flashed all over his body. Guzhen's originally tall body grew bigger and bigger. In a moment, a Buddha statue of several zhang tall slowly appeared, majestic and awe-inspiring. Clang, clang, clang. Just as Ancestor Guzhen's golden Buddha statue appeared, countless sounds came from the profound water palace's mirrors. When Xiao Hua looked up, he saw that many of the previously dazzling mirrors had turned into black holes. The sounds came from the shattering of the illusionary mirrors. A golden Buddha statue can restrain an ancient formation? Xiao Hua was aghast. However, before he could shift his gaze away, the familiar rumbling of magical treasures resounded. Rays of aqua blue light appeared once again. Xiao Hua hurriedly shifted his gaze away. Immediately, waves of strange magical energy fluctuations spread throughout the entire mysterious water palace. This magical energy was like a whirlwind, but also like a scorching heat. Gu Zhan's newly formed golden Buddha statue actually showed signs of melting under this magical energy. Strands of golden sweat seeped out of the golden Buddha statue. A trace of pain appeared on Gu Zhan's face, which was flashing with Buddhist light. He cried out, "The mystic water palace's formation is too powerful. I can't hold on for too long. Hurry up and find the entrance." "Yes," Xi Hui gritted her teeth and hurriedly replied. She then waved her hand and said, "Ti Pu, look over here. Xintanyu, look over there." "Okay." Xian didn't dare to be negligent. She quickly turned around and looked in the direction Xi Hui was pointing at. Xiaohua also did the same. However, Xiaohua didn't use his eyes, but his soul sense. Xian's idea was very ideal, but reality once again showed the crux of the matter. The naked eye couldn't look directly at the illusory mirrors. Even if they could just glance at them now, Xian and Xi Hui didn't dare to be too careless, for fear that they would miss the mirror with the Transcendent's golden body. However, it was extremely difficult to find a mirror with an image among the thousands of mirrors. Xi Hui and Xian's eyes seemed to be dazzled. Heavy dizziness and discomfort rose from the bottom of their hearts. There were several times when they almost got lost in the mirror. Compared to them, Xiaohua was in a better state. Although soul sense wasn't as useful as Xiaohua thought, being able to see through the illusion of the array and see through the array's core with a glance, soul sense wouldn't be reflected by the illusory mirrors, so there was no danger of losing one's mind. However, Xiaohua was the same as Xian and the others. He also didn't dare to be careless. He also checked the mirrors one by one. As time passed, the magic power fluctuations became more rapid. Xiaohua could clearly feel the heat in the surrounding air. He looked again and saw that the surface of Master Gu Zhan's golden body had already melted. Just like Xiaohua's Buddha Sarira, it had turned into golden liquid and flowed down the golden body. When it dripped to where Gu Zhan was standing, it immediately turned into small golden Buddhist lotuses. Gu Zhan's golden body of Buddha is different from Frost Bamboo's great strength Vajra Dharma body. It seems to be transformed from his main body, similar to my heavenly law's embodiment of heaven and earth. As Xiaohua continued probing, he thought to himself, although this Buddhist divine power is a level higher than Frost Bamboo's, the Dharma array has melted his golden body. That means his body will also be damaged. Why don't I use heavenly form to replace it? Thinking up to this point, Xiaohua couldn't help but laugh. No matter what, Great Master Gu Zhan is a Buddhist sect guardian with 5th grade origin energy. Wouldn't his golden Buddha avatar be more profound than my heavenly law's embodiment technique? Instead of thinking too much, why don't I hurry up and find the entrance? If Master Gu Zhan can't support me at the final critical moment, it won't be too late for me to make such a plan. Roar. After a while, Master Gu Zhan's originally straight waist twisted slightly. A slightly hoarse roar came from his mouth. It was unknown whether it was a painful or angry roar. His movement didn't matter. Pa pa pa, several loud pops sounded. Several thumb-sized bubbles appeared on his limbs. Then with several explosions, these bubbles all exploded. Golden liquid splashed out. Before it could fall, it had already bloomed into lotus shapes in the air. The main body is the Sarira, and the Sarira is also the main body. Xiaohua sighed. He understood the meaning of Buddhist guardians. But suddenly, Xiaohua was startled again. My Sarira is in the shape of a Buddha. It seems to be able to form its own body. If a Buddha's Sarira leaves the main body to cultivate on its own, wouldn't it only be able to walk the path of a guardian? Xiaohua was startled. His soul consciousness was a little scattered, and he couldn't tell where he was looking. Xiaohua hurriedly composed himself and grumbled in his heart, although my Buddhist cultivation is at 5th grade essence power, and according to the records of the Buddhist scriptures in Exquisite Temple, I can be considered to have reached the Lotus realm. But in reality, I know very little about Buddhism, and Buddhist magical powers are few and far between. Doesn't Xi Hui also have a Bodhi Sarira? He's not in a hurry, so why should I? Isn't this the entrance to the formation? People often say that one can wear out iron shoes in fruitless search, but by chance, one will find it without any effort. Xiaohua was like that at this moment. He was focused on searching for the entrance, but he didn't find anything. But in a moment of absent-mindedness, his soul consciousness scattered, and he actually found a triangular mirror. On this mirror, other than Xiaohua, Ci Hui, and Xian, there was also Grandmaster Gu Zhen's golden Buddha statue that was much taller than the others. This golden Buddha statue was only much taller than Gu Zhen's main body on the other mirrors, and there wasn't the slightest trace of Buddhist light on it. "It's here!" Xiaohua was overjoyed. He hurriedly pointed at the mirror below him and shouted. But what made Xiaohua extremely surprised was that at this moment, Xian and Ci Hui also shouted in unison, "It's here!" However, the two of them pointed in different directions. Ci Hui pointed in the sky, and Xian pointed in the same direction as Xiaohua. Xiaohua was rather surprised. He didn't think that the two's eyes could be as fast as his soul consciousness. He subconsciously looked in the direction Ci Hui was pointing at. Sure enough, on the same triangular mirror above everyone's heads, Grandmaster Gu Zhen's golden Buddha statue was also reflected. Just as Xiaohua thought, Ci Hui and Xian also looked at each other's mirrors. The three of them then looked at each other with confusion in their eyes. They didn't think that the profound water palace would have two entrances. "Little monk, you're really amazing." Xian looked at Xiaohua again and said curiously, "The area that Immortal Ci Hui assigned to you doesn't seem to be here." Xiaohua rubbed his nose and said honestly, "When I saw Grandmaster Gu Zhen's golden body melt, this little monk couldn't bear to see it. In a moment of absent-mindedness, I looked down below. Grandmaster Gu Zhen's sacrifice moved Buddha and allowed this little monk to see the entrance to the formation. Oh, Grandmaster Gu Zhen, you can take back your avatar now." Phew! Gu Zhen let out a long sigh. The Buddhist light around him quickly disappeared and then shrank like a bubble. His golden body also shrank rapidly and returned to its original form. However, Grandmaster Gu Zhen's face was pale. Not only was his body trembling, but his arms and legs were also trembling. He looked like an old man who had just recovered from a serious illness. "Grandmaster, you've worked hard." Ci Hui hurried forward to support him. Gu Zhen shook his arms and wanted to break free, but he seemed to be powerless and could only let Ci Hui do as she pleased. Xiaohua ignored Xian's reproach. He raised his head and glanced at the mirror Ci Hui pointed at, and then at the mirror he discovered beneath his feet. He asked with a wry smile, "Xianxia, this mysterious water palace actually has two entrances. Is there any record of this in your Moyun eyes?" "No," Xian answered without hesitation. "Then which entrance should we use?" Ci Hui asked from the side. Xian thought for a moment, then clapped her hands and took out two jade boxes. She said, "Although we found the entrance to the profound water palace, we still need to use the Dao Gate to enter the real profound water palace. These are the two talismans I found according to Mo Yuntong's records. These two talismans are exactly the same. I prepared them in case of an emergency. Now that there are two entrances, it is destined that both entrances will be opened. I think it's better to open the entrance first. I'll wait and see, then decide which entrance to enter." "Ah, I'm afraid that's the only way." Ci Hui frowned. Faced with such a difficult problem, she had no choice but to agree. Xian raised her hand and one of the jade boxes opened. A bright cyan halo rushed out of the jade box. Before Xian could cast a spell, a thumb-sized seed jumped out of the jade box. Xiaohua looked at the jade box expectantly. He wanted to know what kind of rare talisman Xian had taken out, but he was still shocked when he saw the seed jump out. Looking at the seed again, it leaped into the air and flickered with an emerald green halo. The halo slowly unfolded and the seed also unfolded along with the halo. Xiaohua could clearly see that it was a talisman in the shape of a leaf. The wrinkles on the talisman and the texture of the leaf were clearly visible. Xiaohua didn't need to use his divine sense to know that it was a rare talisman from ancient times. Chapter 34-33. Sure enough, Xian promptly explained, "This is a Taoist wood spirit talisman. It said that it specializes in breaking water-type formations. The specific refining method has long been lost, and these 2 talismans were found after spending more than 10 years of painstaking effort. They're also the last preparations I've made before entering the formation. I don't know what I'll encounter after entering the profound water palace. Xianxia opened her mouth again and was about to blow out true energy when she suddenly closed it again. She glanced at Xiaohua and said, "Little monk, can you help me next time?" "How can I help you?" Xiaohua was somewhat puzzled. "I don't know any Taoist magic, so how can I help you?" "Of course, if you can teach me how to use Buddhist telekinesis to activate talismans, I'd be more than happy to." You wish." Xian glanced at Xiaohua. "The telekinesis you use is completely different from Taoist magic. I'm a Confucian cultivator, so how can I know this kind of secret technique? If you want this secret technique, you might as well ask your senior martial brother who'll definitely become a bodhisattva in this lifetime." After speaking, Xian opened her mouth and a golden true energy shot out like a sword and hit the leaf talisman. "Sisai." The moment the true energy came into contact with the talisman, it immediately produced a corrosive sound. Following this sound, the emerald green brilliance on the leaf flickered rapidly, as if the leaf was being devoured by insects. "Go!" Xian saw that the talisman's brilliance was faintly flickering. She hurriedly pointed at the talisman. The leaf, like a falling leaf on an autumn night, fell towards the mirror surface that Xiaohua and Xian had identified at the same time. From afar, the mirror surface looked extremely small, but the leaf that fell on it was insignificant. However, as soon as the leaf-like talisman touched the mirror surface, a water-blue brilliance flashed and submerged the entire talisman in an instant. The emerald green brilliance completely disappeared. However, in just a few breaths, a wisp of emerald green brilliance emerged from the water-blue brilliance like a sharp sword. Moreover, as soon as this light appeared, it immediately swayed and expanded. Strands of water-based heaven and earth spirit chi flashed with blue light and flowed into the emerald green light. Within this emerald green light, a vine-like branch stretched out. Wood counters water. Although the wood spirit talisman can't absorb wood-type spiritual energy from the profound water palace, the water-type spiritual energy can still make the wood spirit talisman work. It seems, it's only a matter of time before the profound water palace is destroyed. When Xiaohua saw this situation, he immediately understood in his heart. However, the real situation had exceeded his expectations. In the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the wood spirit talisman had already transformed into vines that completely covered the triangular mirror. When Xian grabbed it with her hand, the vines contracted and instantly shattered the mirror. Behind the mirror, a blue tunnel was revealed. Hiss! Xiaohua's eyes looked at the blue passage, and a feeling emerged from the bottom of his heart. It was as if there was a call coming from the passage with the wind. Xiaohua couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He didn't know what this feeling meant. However, no matter what this feeling meant, there was one thing he was certain of. This entrance was definitely the real entrance. Xiaohua was certain of this. However, Xiaohua only glanced at it and didn't say anything. He quietly waited for Xian to attack again and shatter the other mirror above everyone's heads. Seeing the mirror shatter, before Xian could say anything, Xiaohui's face revealed a look of astonishment. She asked curiously, "What? What does this mean? Why did this little monk feel a call? There seems to be a voice coming from inside. Could it be that this entrance is the real entrance? Damn, how is this possible? How can Xiaohui feel the same as me?" Xiaohua frowned as he looked at the passage that also flashed with blue light. His heart rippled. If one of the passages produced a call, then it would be fine. There must be something attracting this Xiao. However, the 2 passages produced 2 different calls. The biggest possibility is, there's something fishy about the profound water palace. "Little monk, what about you?" Xian didn't answer Xiaohui's question. Instead, she looked at Xiaohua with eyes full of interest. Xiaohua shook his head slightly. This little monk didn't feel the call from the passage. Moreover, contrary to senior brother Xiaohui, this little monk has a subtle feeling about the other entrance. What about Grandmaster Gu Zhen? Xian turned to Gu Zhen. Gu Zhen's face revealed hesitation. After pondering for a moment he said, "This old monk's thoughts are similar to Xiaohui's. The entrance above us should be real. After all, This is the lowest level of the profound water palace. If there is an entrance, it must be facing upwards. Xianxia's expression turned grave. She glanced at Xiaohua and said, although the profound water palace is above us, the entrance might not be. This little monk's feelings are similar to yours. I feel that the entrance below us is real. Xiaohui's expression changed. She said anxiously, this is bad. Could this be the profound water palace's trick? The purpose of this formation is to separate the four of us? Anything is possible. Xian nodded. We only have 3 choices. Either all 4 of us go up, all 4 of us go down, or we split into 2 groups and go our own way. This. Xiaohui was truly hesitant. However, she still insisted. This little monk feels that it's better to go up. This little monk feels that it's better to go down. Xiaohua originally wanted to go up like Xiaohui, but he was somewhat unwilling. His perception had always been accurate. Today there was no reason for it to be wrong. Thus, he also insisted. This little one has heard that formations that have been set up for a long time will give birth to a formation spirit. Could it be that this ancient formation has already gained sentience? Xian laughed. I don't think that's likely to be strange. However, this little one feels that these 2 entrances might be different methods leading to the same result. Although the paths inside are different, they will eventually converge at the same place. Yes. As the saying goes, infinite scenery lies at the peak of a dangerous mountain. These 2 different directions might be a kind of fate and opportunity for us. Gu Zhen said. No matter what you choose, this old monk has decided to go through the entrance above us. With that, Gu Zhen flung his hand, wanting to shake off Xiaohui who was supporting him. However, Xiaohui didn't pull her hand away. She just smiled and said, since Grandmaster has made his choice and this entrance was found by this disciple, it's naturally impossible for us to not go through this entrance. This disciple is willing to go with Grandmaster and help Grandmaster search for the ancient Buddha. Fine. Xian glanced at Xiaohua and nodded. Since this little monk found the same entrance as us, this little one will go through the entrance below with you. With that, Xian winked at Xiaohua and said with a smile, little monk, you have to protect me. Of course. Xiaohua smiled. This little monk was most protective of women before he entered the Buddhist sect. Cough cough. Xiaohui's throat wasn't good again. Once the assignment was completed, Xiaohui supported Gu Zhen and the 2 of them slowly flew towards the entrance above the 4 people's heads. Looking at the backs of the 2 people and then looking at Gu Zhen's tall figure, Xiaohua suddenly thought of the frost bamboo. Naturally, he also thought of the Buddhist protector's unruly way of swallowing relics. Therefore, he immediately opened his mouth and transmitted a few words to Xiaohui. Xiaohui did not seem to have heard him. Not only did she not reply, she did not even slow down in the slightest. The 2 monks, one tall and one short, slowly flew towards the entrance of the blue brilliance in the mountain cave. When the 2 people's figures disappeared, the brilliance flickered slightly and a flat mirror surface appeared there. Now, even if Xiaohua and Xian wanted to follow Xiaohui, it was too late. Little monk. Let's go. We'll go in too. Don't worry about Xiaohui. Grandmaster Gu Zhen isn't as despicable as you think. Xian waved her hand and landed first. How could Xiaohua dare to be negligent? He hurriedly flew down with Xian and said with a flattering smile. The ancient said that one shouldn't have the heart to harm others, but one must guard against others. It's normal for this little monk to be worried about senior martial brother Xiaohui. Who asked Grandmaster Gu Zhen to be a Buddhist Dharma protector? Tieskese. Xian smacked her lips as she flew and said mockingly, which ancient person are you talking about? Why do I often hear people talking about this? Moreover, why do I feel that you, a Buddhist disciple, are even more wary of Buddhists than me? Is that so? Xiaohua rubbed his bald head and said with a smile. That's because you're not a bhikkhuni of my Buddhist Dharma protector and don't know the details of my Buddhist Dharma protector. That's why you're not on guard. What are you on guard against? Xian probed again. Previously, you said that you came to the profound water palace to protect fellow Taoist Xiaohui. At that time, I only thought that you were talking nonsense. But now, it seems that your Buddhist Dharma protector's cultivation is far superior to Xiaohui's. How come I've never heard of such a good-looking, talented, and virtuous little monk like you? Alas, it's hard to give up on one's natural beauty. I've been raised in a boudoir and no one knows me. Xiaohua very regretfully rubbed his bald head and replied, "This little monk has always emphasized on keeping a low profile. I didn't dare to shave my head and become a monk because I was afraid of attracting attention." New Tanyue thought about it. This little monk had just shaved my head and brought you all here. In the blink of an eye, I met a senior martial brother who will definitely attain enlightenment in this lifetime. Since senior martial brother Ci Hui has such a background, New Tanyue presumably also has a family background. Only, I wonder which family does New Tanyue come from in the hidden immortal continent? Do you want to know? Xian flew to the light blue entrance and turned around. Yes. Xiaohua hurried over and nodded his bald head like a chick pecking rice. I just won't tell you. Xian sneered and rushed into the entrance. Don't tell me if you want to. Xiaohua also muttered and followed closely behind. The passage was several zhang tall. As the two flew in one after another, the brilliance of the entire passage actually began to revolve. It was just like the whirlpools that appeared on the four walls of the profound water palace earlier. Wave after wave of blue brilliance drew an arc in front of Xiaohua. At first, it was slow, but then it gradually sped up and rushed forward. Looking behind the two, the place where the blue light surged had already sealed the entrance. There were no longer any gaps. Chapter 34-34. Xian was on high alert. As soon as she entered the entrance, she took out her flexible sword without waiting for the light to change. With a slight twist of her wrist, the blade coiled around her right arm like a spirit snake. Clear qi gushed out from between Xian's eyebrows. Her limpid eyes flickered like the light in the passageway, but the golden light in her eyes only flashed for a moment. Alas! Xian sighed. She knew that she still couldn't use her eye-clearing technique. Her five senses were similar to those of ordinary people in the mysterious water palace. Just as Xian was sighing, she suddenly felt a heavy weight on her shoulders. Startled, she hastily looked up and saw that the blue light in the passageway was gradually stabilizing, and its color was getting denser. What's going on? Xian frowned. Her flying figure slowed down, and she turned to ask in a low voice, "Little monk, do you feel something strange?" Xiaohua was right behind Xian. Seeing her slow down, he understood what she was thinking. He hastily flew to her side and stood shoulder to shoulder with her. He answered, "This little monk feels a little heavy on my body. It seems to be the mysterious water palace's restriction again." Alas, that's what happened. Xian sighed again. After all, it's an ancient array with layer upon layer of strange restrictions. Without strength, it's really difficult to move even an inch. Xiaohua hesitated for a moment, then advised, "Actually, this little monk still has to persuade Lady Benefactor. Right now, our main goal is to find a way out. This mysterious water palace is really not a place where people with our cultivation can enter. Even if you want to find someone, you should first consider your own life, right? Without your life, what can you do? A way out?" Xian shrugged. "It's in this mountain, deep in the clouds." What? Xiaohua's expression suddenly changed. As if he had thought of something, he hastily cried out, "Could it be? You don't know where the exit is?" At this point, Xiaohua really didn't want to ask any more questions. Xian had said that she had the ink cloud pupil. Xiaohua had assumed that since someone had left the ink cloud pupil behind, someone must have left behind information about this ancient formation after escaping. He had followed Xian into the profound water palace. Even if he couldn't see an immortal artifact, he would at least be able to escape unscathed. However, he really didn't expect that the ink cloud pupil in Xian's possession didn't contain any records of this. Xiaohua had been relying on Mo Yuntong and this exit to enter the profound water palace when he had broken through this ancient magic array. Now that Xian didn't know what to say, how could she not be scared witless? This was an ancient array. The previous few checkpoints had already shown how ferocious this array was. And that was only the outer perimeter of the profound water palace. Now that he had truly entered the profound water palace, The passageway once again gave off a heavy feeling. Who knew what he was about to encounter? He had originally thought that he would be able to find a way out if he braced himself and forced himself through this passageway. Who knew? Xiaohua couldn't help but want to cry. Before Xiaohua's tears could fall, the heavy feeling on his body increased again. Xiaohua glanced at Xian. This strange woman was flying with her head held high, looking like a dead pig that wasn't afraid of boiling water. He didn't bother to say anything more. His head drooped as he flew forward with Xian. At this point, he had already made up his mind. Self-preservation was self-preservation. Apart from self-preservation, he didn't care about anything else. Immortal artifacts, prisoners, nothing. He didn't believe that with his divine abilities, he couldn't protect himself. The pressure on his body increased even more. In half the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Xiaohua and Xian had only flown a few dozen meters. Although there was nothing tangible in the passageway, Xiaohua felt that the entire passageway was like a quagmire. He was currently wading through the water. The quagmire that was difficult to walk through was definitely not too far away. Sure enough, as Xiaohua expected, the blue brilliance suddenly changed when it reached the depths of the passageway. Strands of blue blossomed from the deep blue, as if the blue had surpassed the blue. They rapidly rotated within the blue passageway, similar to the blue light that appeared when Xiaohua had just entered the passageway. Oh no! Feeling the heavy pressure on his body increase again, Xiaohua came to his senses and shouted, Xianxia, hurry up and leave. The pressure in this passageway is increasing layer by layer. In the end, it will crush our bodies into minced meat. As he spoke, Xiaohua no longer dared to conceal his cultivation. He activated his transcendence energy and displayed the wind escape technique, rushing towards the front of the passageway. Who would have thought that it would be fine if Xiaohua didn't activate his transcendence energy? But the moment he displayed the wind escape technique, an enormous force crashed into Xiaohua's body along with his transcendence energy. Caught off guard, Xiaohua's entire body fell with a whoosh sound, directly reaching half of Xian's waist. Xiaohua's body sank. His eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at the passageway in the distance. He understood in his heart that this was the Dao Sect's formation. The method to restrict the Dao Sect's disciples was naturally easy to use. At this moment, he had to either give up on using the Dao Sect's divine ability, or forcefully rely on the Dao Sect's divine ability to charge out. Otherwise, he could only continue to use the Buddhist sect's divine ability and deal with the myriad of changes by remaining unchanged. Xian naturally also felt the pressure increase. However, before she could activate the auspicious cloud, Xiaohua suddenly fell down. At this moment, she also looked at Xiaohua strangely. Let's go. Xiaohua didn't explain in detail. He activated the auspicious cloud and rushed forward while rising up again. However, after flying for the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the azure brilliance deepened once more and the pressure doubled once more. Not only did Xiaohua not reach the same height as before, he even became half a foot shorter than before. Naturally, Xian's expression changed greatly and she also fell down like Xiaohua. Little monk, I'm afraid we can't touch the brilliance of this passageway. Xian shouted, although Mo Yuntong no longer has any records, since it's a passageway, we must pass through. This brilliance must be restricted by the profound water palace. If we touch it, we'll definitely suffer. Humph. Not necessarily. What if we're sent out of the profound water palace as soon as we touch it? Xiaohua coldly snorted and retorted sarcastically. Xian glanced at him and said indifferently, why don't you give it a try? I'm not giving it a try. Xiaohua shook his head and suddenly asked, right, benefactress, do you know? Xiaohua originally wanted to ask Xian if she knew Princess Baihua of the Jianghu country, Xian, but before he could say anything, he remembered that he was now the little monk Tipu of the Western Paradise. How could he know a woman from the hidden immortal continent? He immediately shut his mouth. Who do I know? Xian saw that Xiaohua didn't say anything and continued to ask. Forget it. Let's not talk about it. Let's talk about it after we get out alive. Xiaohua waved his hand. At this moment, it was difficult for him to move his hand. Even his arm felt somewhat sore and numb. Xian narrowed her eyes and said, You're not going to say it? Are you afraid I'll see through your intentions? If you have the ability, you can see through it even if I don't say it. Xiaohua argued. Do you think Xianxia couldn't help but get angry. Just as she was about to say something, buzz buzz. The whole passage flashed with a blue brilliance. Rings of light chased after Xiaohua and the others from behind and rushed forward. The speed of the rings of light was different. Each ring was faster than the previous one. The heavy pressure on Xiaohua and Xianxia's body was like a wave, each layer stronger than the previous one. Hurry! Xiaohua urged again, but at this time, the two of them were already doing their best, but the passage still seemed to be endless. Boom! When the blue rings of light chased after them, the whole passage shook, and the color immediately turned green. Along with the change in brilliance, bang bang bang. Sounds came from Xiaohua's body. It was the sound of the joints all over his body. Xiaohua's eyes flashed with shock. He had already discovered the pattern. When the blue brilliance disappeared, the pressure in the passage should be twice as heavy as before. Now that the blue brilliance disappeared again, the pressure should be twice as heavy as before. If he counted, it should be 4 times as heavy as before. Xiaohua didn't know whether this passage was similar to his bone tempering, which required the bone tempering of 7 colors. However, even if it was the 5 elements technique in the end, the pressure was still 32 times as heavy as when he first entered the passage. Of course, this was only Xiaohua's estimation. This was a restriction used to imprison cultivators, so how could it only be 2 or 4 times as heavy? When Xiaohua had just entered the passageway, the pressure from the flickering blue brilliance was already several times that of the outside of the passageway, and then the cyan brilliance was several times stronger. In the end, the pressure was several hundred times or even several thousand times stronger. How could a cultivator withstand this pressure? Xiaohua slightly bit his lips, and Buddhist light flashed around his body. He hurriedly released his soul consciousness and thought to himself, the only thing I can do now is to resist this pressure. This Zhao's body and bones have been tempered, so I should be able to resist for a while. I just don't know if Xianxia will be able to escape this calamity. Thinking up to here, Xiaohua's face suddenly showed joy, and he shouted, Exit, the exit is about 900 feet ahead. We just need to rush to the exit. Xianxia looked at Xiaohua from head to toe, and the panic on her face was not as bad as before. She seemed to have thought of a countermeasure, but she didn't ask Xiaohua how he knew the exit was 900 feet ahead. She only faintly replied, I know. She once again sped up. While the two of them were talking about hope, the restriction inside the passage seemed to know. The green brilliance flickered even faster, and the pressure became even more violent. One moment it was down, the next moment it was up and then left and right. Xiaohua and Xianxia became even more exhausted and couldn't afford to be distracted and increase their speed. Seeing the green brilliance become even denser, Xiaohua's body began to feel strangely sore and swollen. Xiaohua understood that this time, the pressure was already several dozen times heavier than before, and his body was afraid that he was about to reach his limit. However, when he glanced at Xianxia, he saw that she was actually having it easier than him. Strands of golden mist had already appeared on her palace dress, and this mist protected Xianxia's protruding body. The mist had already condensed into armor inscriptions, making it look like a close-fitting golden armor. You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.